Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Shisui Uchiha decides to gift his Mangekyo Sharingan to Naruto part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Shisui Uchiha stood broken. His emotions were already wrecked from the stress of dealing with his clan, which was poised to revolt. Losing his right eye to Danzo's treachery was like rubbing salt in his wound. He had intended to use his Kodomatsu Kami to protect the village, to guide the Uchiha down a path of peace. Now, that hope was all but shattered. He struggled to control the feelings of anger and betrayal, threatening to consume him. He couldn't afford to falter now. The village's future still hung in the balance. Danzo had poisoned him while taking his eye, so he suspected he didn't have much time. His left eye was still intact as he had managed to get away from Danzo before he took that as well. But it would die with him thanks to the poisoning. He couldn't allow that to happen. He needed to find someone worthy to inherit his power, someone who could carry on his mission and safeguard the peace he had fought so hard to maintain. His mind immediately jumped to Itachi. But he discarded that thought as soon as it came to him. Itachi treasured the village above all else bar his little brother. He had a suspicion that if the worst came to pass, Itachi would carry out Danzo's will to eliminate the Uchiha clan if Sasuke is spared. This was not something he could condone. Kinslaughter for the sake of peace was a slippery slope and he wasn't confident that Itachi's choices would be best for the village. Leaving out Itachi presented a problem. There was no guarantee Sasuke would live even if Danzo promises this to Itachi. Even if he did, the poor kid would suffer so much trauma that Shisui couldn't guarantee that he would be mentally stable. There were very few people apart from the Uchiha who could handle the chakra requirement of the Sharingan. In fact, he would say that the Senju and the Uchiha were a tier above the rest in terms of quality and intensity of chakra. Kakashi was living proof that transplanting Sharingan to a non-Uchiha may not be the best idea. Shisui believed that Kakashi's true potential was held back by the implanted Sharingan leeching his chakra. So if he was going to give his Sharingan to a non-Uchiha, they better have a hell lot of chakra with high quality. The Hokage was too old and the whereabouts of the loyal Sannin were unknown to him. This left him with precisely one option. Naruto Uzumaki, hailing from a clan related to the Senju and possessing exceptionally strong chakra. He had watched the kid often during his patrols or as part of his duty, since the Jinchuriki is a high-value asset of the village. Even though he suffered a lot of hate from the villagers, Naruto did not resent them for it. He still sought to be acknowledged by those who scorned him. As far as Shisui could see, Naruto did not have the capacity to hate. This, more than anything else, made him the ideal candidate in Shisui's plan for his Sharingan. His time was limited. With his mind made up, Shisui headed towards Naruto's apartment. There were two ways to give the Sharingan to Naruto. If he implanted it on him, it would be next to impossible for the boy to control it. The other option was to transfer the special chakra that resided in his brain to Naruto. This chakra was responsible in converting a normal eye to the Sharingan, and Shisui theorized that transferring that chakra would also transfer the Kekkei Genkai. The only problem was that the transfer would probably cost him his life, and the one receiving the transfer should be well equipped to handle it without allowing it to overload their brain. Shisui was already a dead man walking thanks to Danzo. To ensure that his ocular chakra would not harm Naruto, he would have to seal it within Naruto until he became adept at controlling chakra. As an academy student, Naruto did not have anywhere near the level of control required to use a Sharingan, let alone his Mangekyo. In a couple of years, Shisui was sure Naruto would be able to control the onslaught of his ocular chakra by virtue of him possessing an equally exceptional chakra. Little did Shisui know the consequence of melding the chakra of an Uchiha descendant with the chakra of a Senju descendant. The result of his interference would awaken within Naruto a power that makes even the Mangekyo Sharingan pale in comparison. But this would not occur until several years later. Naruto was falling. Ninja fall all the time, but usually, they are in control of their bodies while doing so. The depth of the chasm Naruto was thrown into ensured that he could not boast any such control over his body. In fact, he was rapidly accelerating and everything around him was blurring. I'll kill that pervy sage if he doesn't kill me first. Arg. In a fit of desperation, Naruto tried to cling to the walls of the ravine, but his speed ensured that all of his efforts were futile. A few years ago, when Shisui Uchiha transferred his ocular chakra to Naruto, he kept a few failsafes to make sure Naruto was protected. First, he conditioned that the seal withholding his ocular chakra be released only when Naruto achieves a specified level of control of his chakra. This requirement would be relaxed if the seal detected a life or death situation. Both these requirements were satisfied simultaneously at this moment. Naruto had learned the water walking exercise, which gave him the bare minimum chakra control specified by Shisui. When he was hurled into the ravine, Naruto's adrenaline levels skyrocketed enough to trigger the second failsafe condition. Thus, at that moment, the seal withholding Shisui's ocular chakra became undone. The chakra of a descendant of the Senju lineage mixed with the exceptional ocular chakra of the Uchiha, triggering the rebirth of the most powerful bloodline limit in history. Within the confines of his seal, Kurama sensed a chakra that he had almost forgotten for 1,000 years. Naruto wasn't sure where he was, but he sure wasn't falling anymore. That was good. Unless he's dead. That wouldn't be good. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto whirled around, looking for the source of the voice. He was sure he was alone. It looked like he was standing on water with just a pitch-black void surrounding him. However, he was no longer alone. An old man wearing a long white robe stood before him. His clothing had wide sleeves and a high collar. The robe has intricate black tomo symbols. Over the robe, he wore a black sash tied around his waist. He held a tall, black staff with a circular ring on the top, through which 6 smaller rings were attached. Most of this was lost to Naruto, who focused on the fact that he had 2 horns, weird eyes, and what looked like a blood-red third eye above his nose. Ah. An Oni. Get away from me. Naruto tried in vain to scramble back, for the distance between them remained the same. Hagoromo Otsutsuki sighed. He had not intended to meet with Ashura's descendant so soon. The boy was too young to understand his philosophies or the complicated history of the world. However, Shisui Uchiha had caused a complication. Thankfully, this complication was not as bad as what had happened with Madara. I will not harm you, child, Hagoromo spoke softly. I am not an Oni. I am but an old man, a hermit watching this world. What? Naruto blinked. Why do you have horns then? That is genetic. Think of it like a bloodline limit. Hagoromo sighed. He had faced some bad rep due to his horns even during his lifetime. Naruto looked around. Where are we? Who are you and what do you want with me? The simplest explanation I can give you is that we are in your mind. Inside your consciousness. My name is Hagoromo Otsutsuki, once known as the Sage of the 6 Paths. I lived 1,000 years before your time. Certain circumstances have caused me to appear inside your mind. What circumstances? Naruto did not have a single clue what the old man was talking about. Wait. If we are inside my mind, am I still falling down? Do not worry. Time passes here much slower than it does outside. But it would be wise to shorten our conversation. Hagoromo soothed him. It's a long story, but I will tell you the essentials. You are a descendant of mine through my younger son, Ashura. This is because your Uzumaki clan is an offshoot of the Senju clan founded by Ashura. My elder son, Indra, formed the Uchiha clan that you undoubtedly know of. Hagoromo smiled when he saw Naruto scowl, thinking of Sasuke. 3 years ago, an Uchiha intentionally passed on his chakra to you, causing the chakra of the Senju and the Uchiha to merge inside of you. Naruto nodded mutely, not understanding the significance of what he was hearing. I don't remember it though. Why did he do that? You were probably asleep while he did it. He did it hoping that you would carry on his ideals of peace and protect his village. Your unique chakra as part of your Senju lineage made you a suitable candidate, along with the ability to withstand the hate of the village for no fault of your own. Naruto grimaced. You will understand more in due time. Just know that the one who did this was an exceptional shinobi called Shisui Uchiha. Naruto vaguely recalled Sasuke being picked up by an uncle Shisui once after the academy was over. Hagoromo continued. This mixing of chakra caused my chakra to awaken within you, Naruto. The bloodline limit of the Senju lies in their exceptionally strong chakra that can accommodate any elemental nature. This power lies dormant within you already. When the special chakra of the Uchiha was mixed with it, the combination produced my own chakra as a result. This is the reason why I have come here to meet you. I will now explain what it means to wield my power and give you a few suggestions on how to control it. A moment later, Naruto opened his eyes in the real world. His hand pointed to the ground on its own accord. Shinra Tensei. An otherworldly power burst forth from his arms and pushed against the rapidly approaching ground. His descent slowed, stopped, and reversed. In a moment, he was shooting upwards rather than plummeting to his death. Jiraiya did not see any sign indicating that the Nine Tails chakra was being unleashed. A crippling fear gripped him when he realized that he might have been a tad too much reckless in his plan. Although Jinchuriki were known to be sturdy, a drop from such a height might actually kill the boy if the Nine Tails didn't cooperate. A moment passed, and he saw the subject of his concern barreling upwards, towards him. He barely had a moment to blink owlishly before Naruto's fist collided with his jaw and he was sent flying. Oh, what is your face made of, old man? Naruto complained, cradling his broken wrist. Jiraiya got up from his undignified sprawl, rubbing his jaw with a pained expression. You pack a punch, kid, he muttered, trying to shake off the impact. But you might want to work on your technique a bit more. Looks like you hurt yourself more than me. He grinned. No kidding. Naruto glared at his new teacher. You could have just ditched me if you didn't like teaching me that much. No need to try and off me. Now, no pain no gai holy fuck, is that a Rinnegan? Jiraiya gawked, his eye bulging out in surprise. Indeed, the clear cerulean blue eyes of his student were replaced with a steel gray sclera and black circles in a ripple pattern similar to his first student. "Oh yeah, he told me my eyes would change," Naruto muttered. "Do you have a mirror or something?" Jiraiya produced a mirror from his pocket, to which Naruto raised a questioning eyebrow. For research, Jiraiya smirked, and Naruto rolled his eyes before taking the mirror to inspect his new look. He studied his reflection, turning his head from side to side. "Well, that's something," he said, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his voice. "You said something about someone telling you this would happen?" Jiraiya asked probingly, his tone nonchalant. Inside, his mind was working a mile a minute, thinking of all the possible explanations for this. He could come up with none. Naruto's chakra was still mostly the same, so that ruled out the possibility of him being switched by some impostor. And an impostor wouldn't go to the trouble of distinguishing himself from Naruto's appearance so blatantly. "I met an old alien sage in my mind when I was falling to my death." Naruto huffed and crossed his arms. "Speaking of which, alien sage?" Jiraiya furrowed his brows. "He called himself the sage of the six paths or something. What? Is he a big deal?" Jiraiya was stunned. "A big deal?" "Naruto, the sage of the six paths, is the founder of ninjutsu and the ancestor of all shinobi. If you met him, it's the biggest deal in history. But he lived 1,000 years ago, so I'm not sure how you might have met him. If you didn't have a Rinnegan right now, I wouldn't even be considering what you said is the truth." Naruto blinked, processing the information. "So, this guy is important. Great. What does that mean for me?" "That depends on what he told you." Jiraiya trailed off, prompting Naruto to explain his situation to him. Half an hour later, both Jiraiya and Naruto were waiting patiently as the third Hokage finished smoking 6 straight pipes after processing the information that was conveyed to him. As his hands twitchingly went for the 7th pipe, Naruto cleared his throat impatiently. Forgive me, Naruto. I am merely contemplating the implications of this revelation." The third Hokage and the third person to hold the title of the God of Shinobi said in embarrassment. What Naruto had revealed to them was a world-alteringly significant piece of information. Naruto shifted uncomfortably. "So, what do we do now, old man?" The third Hokage sighed, putting down his pipe. "We must be cautious. The power of the Sage of the Six Paths is immense. We need to ensure you can control it and understand its full potential. This is not something we can take lightly." "You said the sage imparted some of his knowledge to you?" Naruto nodded hesitantly. "It's difficult to explain. But I feel like I understand this chakra stuff a whole lot better now." He opened his palm and a black rod materialized in it. "Is that?" the third Hokage asked in shock. "The yin-yang release, I believe." Jiraiya breathed reverently. Lord Fukasaku had mentioned stories told to him by Lord Gamamaru. "It's the real deal." Hiruzen swallowed. "Can you float, Naruto?" "Maybe." Naruto tried to emulate what he did during his fall down the cliff. Slowly, his form rose from the ground as if gravity held no meaning. He still wobbled, but he had accomplished something the third had only seen Inoki of the Hidden Stone and his predecessor do before. Excitement bubbled in Hiruzen's chest. The potential that Naruto was demonstrating was endless. He thanked Shisui a million times for his sacrifice and for strengthening the village. He still bitterly regretted the fate of the Uchiha. Shisui would have hated that his fears had come to pass. He passed a sheet of chakra paper from his desk to Naruto. "Channel chakra into it," he instructed. Naruto did as he was told. The paper disintegrated. Jiraiya tilted his head. The reaction was similar for Nagato. To Naruto's questioning look, Jiraiya said, "I'll tell you about him later." "The chakra paper isn't designed to withstand such a powerful chakra," Hiruzen concluded. "Perhaps it's mimicking the reaction of particle release, as it might be the closest known affinity to the yin-yang release of the six paths." Hiruzen's expression turned serious. "Jiraiya, from this moment, you are to focus your efforts on training him. Only 3 days remain for the Chunin exams, which is too short of a time for him to reveal his Rinnegan. We need to come up with a way to hide it. Actually, the old alien sage taught me how to cover it up." Naruto smiled. Suddenly, his eyes looked the same as before. "I didn't know that it could be deactivated." Jiraiya was overjoyed. A lot of the headaches associated with the emergence of the Rinnegan were now postponed until Naruto would be ready. "They can, but that's not what I'm doing," Naruto said, a little smugly. He said it's a perception filter or something. Naruto struggled to explain it. "It's not a genjutsu, it just changes the light reflected from my eyes to make it look like my eyes are normal." He said it may not completely work on exceptionally gifted Hyuga clan members, though. "I can deactivate the Rinnegan, but," he said, "with this, I can still have the advantage of seeing through it without letting others know about it." "What?" the third asked in a daze. He couldn't see the depth of Naruto's new ability. "Somehow, I have a feeling I didn't even scratch the surface of the Rinnegan's potential with Nagato." Jiraiya shook his head in amazement. The third pondered his options for a moment and faced Naruto. "Naruto, for your safety as well as the safety of our village, do not reveal your Rinnegan until Jiraiya allows you to do so." This includes its abilities. Any ability that can be explained by existing jutsu is fine. But the yin-yang release and your ability to float should be kept especially under wraps. The third side. I expect this list to expand soon. Boy, then how am I supposed to win against Neji, old man? Do you need the most powerful eye technique in existence to deal with a genin, Naruto? If so, I would have to doubt your ability to become a chunin. Naruto looked like he swallowed a lemon. I guess not. But he has freaky eyes too. Well, I'm sure your Rinnegan would be able to show you most of what Neji can't see with his Byakugan. Jiraiya consoled. And you would be training under me. So there really isn't any need for you to worry. As long as you don't throw me off a cliff again, Naruto muttered. Unfortunately for Jiraiya, the third heard him. Did you leave out anything significant in your explanation earlier, Jiraiya? The third asked him in a deceptively calm tone. Oh haha. Maybe. Naruto stood in a clearing of training ground 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training ground. The third Hokage had chosen this place for training as only a few shinobi ever trained there, and it was easy to prevent anyone from spying on Naruto's training. They even had Anbu and Jiraiya's summon set up a perimeter since they had to be wary of Orochimaru. Naruto felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as he faced both Jiraiya and the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The two legendary shinobi had decided to train him together for today, as they had to make sure that Naruto could understand and control the Rinnegan in the shortest time possible. The Hokage would leave tomorrow after imparting him some basics, and Jiraiya would take over the training fully for the remaining 2 days. Naruto suspected that the old man wanted to keep an eye on Jiraiya's training methods. He wasn't too happy to learn that Naruto was thrown off a cliff. Naruto, create a few shadow clones. Hiruzen ordered. Naruto nodded and made the familiar hand signs. Shadow clone jutsu. He shouted, and several identical copies of himself appeared around him. Whoa, Naruto swayed a little. The heck is this? What happened? Jiraiya asked, concerned. I'm seeing double. I can see myself and both of you from different angles. Naruto trailed off, struggling to explain what he was seeing. Hiruzen furrowed his brow, deep in thought. It seems your connection with the clones has intensified. The Rinnegan's influence might be enhancing your sensory abilities, allowing you to perceive through your clones more acutely. Jiraiya nodded, crossing his arms. That makes sense. The Rinnegan grants heightened perception and abilities. I can already imagine the potential of this technique, but it could also be overwhelming at first. Naruto blinked rapidly, trying to focus. So, I just need to get used to it, right? Exactly, Hiruzen said. Start by focusing on your own perspective first, then slowly expand your awareness to include the clones. It will take time, but you'll adapt. Naruto took a deep breath, focusing on himself. Gradually, the dizzying sensation eased and he began to manage the multiple perspectives. It was still extremely confusing, but he felt he could now move about without stumbling. Jiraiya, take the clones with you and get them used to sparring and dodging. I suspect Naruto will lose his connection with the clones once you are far enough away. I can then focus on training his elemental affinity. Jiraiya nodded and motioned the clones to follow him. Hiruzen waited for a few moments and observed that Naruto started furrowing his brows. Are you no longer connected to the clones? Yeah, I felt like my vision through them was blurry for a moment and then I couldn't see anything from them. How far away did they get? Hiruzen asked curiously. A couple 100 meters I guess. Naruto estimated. Good. We will now begin elemental training. Create 8 more clones. Naruto was confused. Why are we using shadow clones, old man? And what's the use of pervy sage sparring with my clones? I'm not even there with them. He trailed off uncertainly. Hiruzen looked at Naruto incredulously. Naruto, haven't you realized the unique advantage of your shadow clone jutsu? Naruto blinked, still unsure. What do you mean? Hiruzen sighed, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. When your shadow clones disperse, all the experiences and knowledge they gained return to you. This means that every clone can train separately and you'll gain the benefit of all their training, as if you had done it yourself. Naruto's eyes widened as realization dawned on him. Oh. So, even if I'm not there, I'll still learn from everything my clones do. Exactly, Hiruzen confirmed. He created 2 shadow clones himself. Now, let's focus. Divide into groups of 3. We shall practice 3 elemental affinities simultaneously. Earth, water, and fire styles are said to be relatively easier to master, and we shall start with them. One group will practice earth style with me, another will work on water style, and the third on fire style. The clones nodded in unison, splitting into 3 groups. Hiruzen led his group consisting of the original Naruto to one side of the clearing. Hiruzen began his lesson. Naruto, controlling earth chakra requires patience and precision. I think with your Rinnegan, it would help if you watch me perform a few earth-style techniques that highlight the different applications. Understand how the normal chakra is converted to attain the change of nature and watch how the hand seals influence this change. This is an unconventional way of teaching this, but it may be more beneficial for you. Now, watch closely. Hiruzen performed a series of hand seals with deliberate precision. Earth style. Earth Dragon Bullet. He declared. The ground shook as a massive earthen dragon emerged, opening its massive jaws before launching multiple earth projectiles. Notice how I convert my chakra into earth nature, Hiruzen explained. The hand seals channel and shape the chakra, allowing it to transform into the earth nature. The dragon and its projectiles are a result of this precise manipulation. Naruto nodded, his Rinnegan picking up on the flow of chakra and the subtle changes during each hand seal. I see it the way your chakra changes as you form each seal. I see it change color, sort of. And your chakra became a lot denser and spread into the ground through your feet. Hiruzen smiled. Exactly. Now, let's move on to another technique. This one focuses on defense. Earth style. Mud wall. He quickly formed the necessary seals, and a sturdy wall of earth rose from the ground, solid and imposing. Again, observe the conversion of chakra and the difference from my previous attempt, Hiruzen instructed. Feel the stability and strength of the wall. It's all about merging your chakra with the earth. Naruto concentrated, watching the chakra transformation with his Rinnegan. He could see how it merged with the earth to form a solid barrier. Hiruzen demonstrated a few more techniques, each with deliberate precision, while going into more detail on each jutsu each time. He explained the importance of each hand seal, how chakra can be concentrated or dispersed, how the timing of the seals could affect the jutsu's power and stability, and how different combinations of seals could produce varied effects. He was enjoying the resumption of his teaching after such a long time. He was also amazed at some of the insights Naruto gained regarding his techniques thanks to his Rinnegan. Now, it's time to put it into practice. Try to create a small mud wall, which is the easiest earth-style technique to learn. Hiruzen instructed. Naruto and his clones nodded, excited at the prospect of finally learning a cool jutsu after the summoning technique. Meanwhile, Jiraiya had instructed a couple of Naruto clones to focus on floating above the ground without moving. He reasoned that this would be a good exercise in chakra control, which would help Naruto in the long run. He turned to the remaining clones and grinned. Alright. Now, all of you come at me and try to land a hit on me. I will not use my hands at any point. He grinned, seeing Naruto's insulted expression. 3 clones charged at him abruptly, their fists aiming for his torso. Jiraiya dodged effortlessly, using his legs and body to evade their attacks. Come on, is that all you've got? Jiraiya taunted, a taunting smirk on his face. The clones regrouped and attacked again, this time coordinating their efforts. One aimed high while the other 2 went low, trying to corner Jiraiya. He leaped into the air, flipping over their heads and landing gracefully behind them. Nice try, but you'll have to do better than that, he said, still grinning. The clones were having a hard time absorbing the influx of information from multiple perspectives. He could see Jiraiya from 6 different angles, but he still couldn't land a hit. It was frustrating, to say the least. Alright, guys, let's change tactics, the designated lead clone of the group muttered to himself. They spread out, attacking from different angles and using feints to try and catch Jiraiya off guard. Despite their improved strategy, Jiraiya continued to dodge their attacks with ease. His experience showed when he used every opportunity to teach Naruto through action. Focus on reading my movements, not just reacting. Anticipate where I'll be, he advised, effortlessly sidestepping another punch. The clones persisted, their movements becoming a little more coordinated and precise with each attempt. Jiraiya had started aiming kicks at them, slow enough that they could barely dodge. His unpredictable style kept them on their toes, forcing him to anticipate and adapt. Remember, Jiraiya called out as he spun away from a clone's attack, your enemies won't just stand still. You need to be ready for anything. He arched his leg back, his feet touching one of the clones that was sneaking up behind him. He was deliberately gentle with his taijutsu so that the clones could be dispersed only after absorbing a significant amount of his teachings. One clone tried to sweep his legs from behind while another aimed for his midsection. Jiraiya jumped, narrowly avoiding both attacks, and landed with a graceful roll. He was about to offer more advice when a third clone came from his blind spot, its fist aimed at his side. Jiraiya smirked, spinning to evade and counter with a gentle tap of his foot to the clone's shoulder. Nice try, but you need to coordinate better and understand exactly when the opponent is off guard. Sneak attacks are good, but doing them frequently will just help your opponent anticipate it. The light sparring continued for an hour before Jiraiya dispersed all 3 clones in a roundhouse kick after telling them to inform the original to send more. A few disgruntled clones arrived a minute later, fresh and ready to take a beating. I think I've given you enough time to acclimatize with your Rinnegan. I will now stop holding back, so ask the original to keep sending clones each time I pop one of you. The clones shivered at Jiraiya's positively gleeful expression. At the end of the day, Naruto had exhausted all his chakra reserves from continuously spawning clones for Jiraiya to take down. The elemental training had taken a toll on him too, as the clones dispelled by themselves once they used up the chakra that was allotted to them. By the second day of training, Naruto had made significant progress with earth manipulation, mastering the mud wall and the mud river techniques to an extent that allowed their use in battle. He had also learned to spit small bouts of fire and form a small stream of water from his mouth. He was training by a river to make the water-style training easier. His gravity manipulation, or floating skills as he liked to call it, now allowed him to move short distances in the air. This skill drained the chakra of his clones quite fast, and Jiraiya decided to deprioritize it. "I heard you are good enough with the basics of earth manipulation now." Jiraiya began. "I'll teach you a technique that's a pain in the ass for Hyuga to handle, as I heard your first opponent is one. Consider that as an apology for my earlier admittedly harsh training method." Naruto twitched. Harsh was too mild a word, but he refrained from saying anything. He was eager to learn the new jutsu, after all. And kick Neji's ass. "Watch carefully. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld." Instantly, a large chunk of the ground around Naruto turned into viscous, sticky mud. Naruto tried in vain to make himself stand on top of the newly created swamp using chakra, but his efforts were futile. The swamp was too unpredictable, and his chakra could not find a way to stabilize on top of it. He was slowly sinking down, and his flailing only served to worsen the situation. "Fuck this. Shinra Tensei." Naruto ejected himself out of the swamp. He grinned and made a face at Jiraiya, who sighed. "That's cheating," he muttered. "Anyway, you can't be sure the Hyuga kid can't do that. So as long as you practice this today and tomorrow, there will be very few opponents of the genin level you can't handle." "Really?" Naruto was excited. This seemed like a super neat jutsu. "Yeah, it's A ranked for a reason. It's my own original jutsu, you know. The only catch is that you need a lot of chakra to make it work and you need to be quick enough to execute it. The chakra will not a problem for you. Those without elemental ninjutsu would find it hard to escape from this. Let me try. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld." Naruto exclaimed, imitating what he had seen Jiraiya do. A miniature puddle formed in front of him. Naruto cursed out loud. "Ha! You'll need a lot more chakra than that, kid. This isn't a mud river, it's a swamp filled with thick chakra. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld." Naruto repeated, amassing as much chakra as he could control at the moment. Jiraiya swiftly jumped back as his immediate surroundings turned into a marshland. A few nearby trees toppled over as the swamp began to gradually increase in size. Naruto once again felt the familiar sensation of the swamp pulling him down. "You need to strengthen the ground beneath you, obviously." Jiraiya said. "And then work on the speed of the jutsu. The Hyuga would have disabled you by the time you pull this off if that's the best you can do." "Gee, did you get this far on your second try, pervy sage?" Naruto asked, sarcasm dripping in his voice. "I didn't have a legendary eye with me, kid. And I invented it, so it took longer." Jiraiya crossed his arms. "Now, on with it." Naruto grumbled as he created a few clones and started working on the new technique. A bit further away, his other clones were practicing fire and water manipulation, while a few others were sparring with each other to hammer in the lessons from the previous day. Jiraiya was sure the final stage of the Chunin exams was going to be very interesting this time around. He didn't know how right he was. Naruto entered the Konoha Stadium, the venue for the final round of the Chunin exams. The whole place was buzzing with anticipation and excitement. The stands were filled with spectators, and Naruto saw some familiar faces among them. His Rinnegan, covered under the illusion devised by the sage, could pick up the large and small chakra sources surrounding him. He could easily find the Jonin sensei and his former classmates near them. Hinata was still looking a little worse for wear from her battle with Neji. He would make sure to kick his ass for her. Next to her, he saw Sakura. Her chakra was minuscule, and Ino's wasn't much better. He was surprised to find that Gaara's chakra was one of the largest among those present, barring the cage and Jiraiya. Speaking of which, there was something not quite right about the Sand Village cage sharing the booth with the old man. He figured it was probably a bloodline limit, but he was weird. Naruto didn't know how to explain it, but the guy felt evil. He joined the other genin who were lined up, each one standing tall and ready. Well, except Shikamaru, who was slouching. He grinned and stood next to the lazy Nara. Shikamaru's chakra was the smallest among the contestants, but he could see that it was heavily yin-natured with only a little yang chakra. That explained the Nara clan's affinity to shadows, Naruto supposed. He felt thankful that the Hokage had given him a brief review of all the known chakra natures and their combinations. Naruto frowned as he couldn't locate Kakashi or Sasuke in the crowd. They were probably running late, which was unsurprising since it was on form for Kakashi. Speaking of which, that's another bastard that needed some ass kicking. The proctor for the exam stepped forward, his voice booming across the stadium. "Welcome to the final round of the Chunin exams. Today, each of you will have to fight for your life to show that you are worthy of the title of Chunin. Anything goes from this moment on, although you may get more points if you keep your opponent alive at the end of it. As one of the contestants for the first match is no longer with us, the first match will be Naruto Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga. The remaining contestants are to observe from the stadium until your turn arrives. As the other contestants moved to the gallery, Naruto took his place in one half of the arena. Neji faced him with his usual calm demeanor, his Byakugan activated. A tense silence fell over the stadium. I see that you have decided to fight fate and partake in this meaningless battle. Know that it is futile. Neji smiled, knowing that his words would grate on his opponent's nerves. Naruto took a calming breath. If you're so sure of yourself, Neji, let's make a wager, shall we? What do you have that would be of use to me? Neji snorted. Afraid of losing, I see. Naruto nodded understandingly. Wager something worthwhile and I might take you up, Neji glared fiercely. Or stop this childish babbling. I'll wager my forehead protector. Naruto declared. And you have to stop being mean to Hinata if you lose instead. Naruto, what are you doing? Sakura shouted from the stands, horrified. Wagering one's forehead protector would be equivalent to giving up being a shinobi. He's lost it. Ino shook her head. There's a time and a place for showing off. He's gained a lot of confidence. Shikamaru frowned. I know he's an idiot, but this seems excessive. Many in the crowd were equally perplexed by Naruto's declaration, having already decided that the fight was a foregone conclusion. Hiruzen Sarutobi watched intently from the cage's booth, wondering if Naruto could afford to be that confident. Back in the arena, Neji's grin widened. Either way, you win. You will not die a pitiful death in the field if you are no longer a ninja. But, I accept your challenge. It will be amusing to see you fail. Naruto grinned right back. I'll make sure you regret underestimating me, Neji. The proctor raised his hand, signaling the start of the match. Begin. Naruto immediately created several shadow clones, surrounding Neji. The clones rushed in, attacking from all sides. Neji's eyes narrowed, his Byakugan active. He moved fluidly and struck the approaching clones with pinpoint accuracy. His gentle fist technique disrupted the chakra of each clone he hit, causing them to disperse in puffs of smoke. Next, Naruto created even more clones and had them take out Shuriken this time. A barrage of Shuriken assaulted Neji from every direction. Neji was no stranger to facing such an onslaught of weapons, thanks to his teammate. He didn't hesitate and automatically switched to his default counter. 8 trigrams. Palm rotation. Neji spun where he stood and a spherical dome of chakra expanded outward, surrounding him. The spinning barrier deflected the shuriken with ease, sending them clattering to the ground. What's that jutsu? Sakura asked curiously. She hadn't seen Hinata use something like that before. The palm rotation is a secret technique of my clan, Hinata said softly, surprise evident in her voice. I didn't know Neji Niasen had mastered it. It relies on expelling chakra through all the points in the chakra network to create a shield. It's our clan's absolute defense. Sakura frowned, worried. Naruto's go-to move was his shadow clone. I hope he's learned something new. She didn't have much hope since Kakashi-sensei was focusing on Sasuke. As soon as the wave of attack subsided, Neji dashed towards the nearest Naruto clone. With a single strike, the clone dispersed in a puff of smoke. Neji moved to the next clone, striking it down with the same efficiency. Naruto smirked and created more clones. Half of the clones and Naruto quickly flipped through some hand signs. Water style. Water bullet. They shouted in unison, launching a barrage of high-speed water bullets toward Neji. Neji's eyes narrowed as he activated his Byakugan, tracking the incoming attacks. He spun rapidly, calling out, 8 trigrams. Palm rotation. The spherical dome of chakra expanded around him, deflecting the water bullets with ease. Naruto intently watched the dome and locked onto the moment the dome began to subside. The other half of his clones immediately began to perform the same hand signs as earlier. Neji was annoyed when he realized Naruto's strategy. To keep alternating attacks using 2 groups of clones and force him to maintain his technique. As soon as the technique slowed, the second wave of clones launched another barrage of water bullets. Neji gritted his teeth and spun into another rotation, deflecting the attacks. He's trying to wear me down, he thought, irritation evident on his face. And he has a very large chakra reserve. Naruto grinned. A battle of attrition was always in the favor of a Jinchuriki. Well, it looks like Naruto learned a few tricks. Kiba laughed with glee. If Naruto didn't put on a good showing, it would reflect badly on him too. Water-style jutsu, Sakura breathed, stunned. A moment ago, she was sure that Naruto didn't have much hope against Neji. But it seemed the tables had turned. She was shocked that Naruto had learned elemental jutsu in such a short span of time. She had started to feel that she was out of her depth ever since the Forest of Death. That feeling came back with a vengeance when she realized how much Naruto had improved. As the first set of clones began preparing for another barrage of water bullets, Neji abruptly broke off his technique and attacked the nearest Naruto. He was grazed by multiple water bullets and hit by two, but Neji had ensured that the ones he allowed to land were in non-lethal spots. Dispelling the clone, Neji promptly put some distance between himself and his opponents. He made it seem like the technique takes some time to stop, but also knew how to stop it suddenly. Naruto was impressed. Neji had executed the slowed stop of the palm rotation, mostly for show and finesse, and quite possibly for deception. As soon as he saw Neji break off the technique, Naruto began to form another set of hand seals. Earth style. Mud wall. He shouted, slamming his hands to the ground. His clones that were not yet dispersed copied his actions. While his earlier demonstration of water style had caused some surprised murmurs, the revelation of a second elemental nature caused an outroar, especially among the ninja of the Leaf Village who knew Naruto well. That's impossible. Kurenai exclaimed, her eyes widening in surprise. He learned two elemental natures in such a short time. He only used subpar Taijutsu against Kiba. Asuma nodded, his expression serious. It seems Kakashi has been holding back on what he's been teaching Naruto. Tree walking my ass. The Hokage watched Naruto with interest. It seems he was able to speed up the jutsu as I asked him to. He will become a formidable shinobi soon. Rasa, the Kazekage, narrowed his eyes. Something has happened to the Jinchuriki. Jiraiya could not have taught him so much in such a short time, even if they exploited shadow clones to the fullest. The boy was hopeless in the forest. Mud walls blocked his path as Neji rushed to attack Naruto. He jumped and maneuvered around the small obstacles adeptly. The fight was taking far longer than he calculated and he was exposing most of his techniques. The same could be said for Naruto, but Neji could see that the boy hadn't exhausted even a fraction of his chakra. He had misjudged him greatly. Naruto and his clones were moving around too fast and the terrain was changing along with them. A few clones also pestered him with water bullets to keep him on his toes. I need to finish this now. Neji thought as he dodged another bullet. He leaped into the air and landed on the other side of the stadium. You're within the range of my divination. He announced, changing his stance. The Ashi jolted, recognizing the secret technique of the Hyuga clan. Watch carefully, Hanabi, he instructed. It seems your cousin has learned the most coveted technique of the Hyuga clan. From the stands, Hinata froze in her seat as she recognized the technique. The 64 palms, she whispered. What now? Sakura asked, afraid of the answer. That is the highest ranked defensive technique of my clan. The speed of the attacks increases exponentially with each step of the technique. If Naruto-kun gets hit, the fight will be over. She said sadly. Come on, have more faith in him, Hinata. Kiba shouted. Yo Naruto, you better not get your ass kicked. I don't plan to, dog breath, Naruto muttered as he flipped through yet another series of hand seals. 3 of his clones imitated him. Earth style. Mud river. In an instant, small rivers of mud flowed from each of the Naruto clones, converging on Neji. For a moment, Neji lost his footing. He quickly adjusted the chakra beneath his feet and started to charge towards Naruto, intent on finishing his technique. Although he had not executed it on muddy water before, he was confident in his success. However, he could not move as quickly as before. Now for phase 2, Naruto muttered and eyed 4 other clones that were going through a slightly different set of hand seals. Neji was closing in fast, but he would be faster. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld. The second set of clones shouted while slapping their palms in the muddy water. That boy Hiashi shook his head in disbelief. It seems the rumors were true. Jiraiya had indeed trained Naruto for the Chunin exams. The evidence lay in the form of Jiraiya's original jutsu that Naruto was now showcasing. Well, looks like it's a wrap for the Hyuga. Asuma said with surprise evident in his voice. I never imagined that kid would learn an A-rank jutsu in addition to 2 chakra natures. He probably trained with the help of shadow clones. Kurenai guessed. But this is incredible. Isn't this Lord Jiraiya's jutsu? Asuma glanced at Jiraiya, who was smirking next to the Hokage. It seems Naruto found a new mentor for the Chunin exams. Now that's what I call out-of-the-box thinking, Jiraiya commented, impressed. He found a way to increase the speed of the swamp with shadow clones. Hiruzen nodded approvingly. He set the stage quite well with a liberal use of water-style jutsu and mud river. Rasa, or Orochimaru in disguise, shifted his eyes to make eye contact with Kabuto, who was disguised as an Anbu. Kabuto shifted his position slightly, understanding the message. Neji had noticed the secondary jutsu a moment too late. He had assumed that the clones were all going for the same jutsu. However, the chakra that spread through the mud was thicker and the mud suddenly became much stickier. He could no longer keep his feet above the mud and each step caused him to get dragged down little by little. He tried in vain to jump, but he could not get a foothold in the thick swamp. Even expelling chakra from his feet to disperse the mud had little effect. The chakra traveled sluggishly once it left his feet and was unable to impart any force. Neji's mind raced as he tried to find a way out. I can't let it end like this, he thought, panic setting in. He focused his Byakugan, scanning the swamp for any weak points or inconsistencies that he could exploit. But the swamp was dense and filled with shifting chakra which would pull him down wherever he escaped to. Neji attempted to use his gentle fist to push away the mud, striking the surface with precise chakra-infused blows. However, the chakra dispersed harmlessly through the mud. He then tried concentrating chakra on his feet in a desperate bid to create a solid platform to leap from. But he could not create a foothold in the ever-changing swamp. Damn it. Neji cursed, realizing that his usual techniques were ineffective. His set of skills were too specialized, and this swamp was a nightmare for Taijutsu users. This was probably a very high-ranking jutsu, something he wouldn't have imagined Naruto to be capable of. Was this fate's way of mocking him? Neji had thought that talent was absolute and determined at birth. But someone whom he had deemed to be talentless had now completely outmaneuvered him. If this was a real fight, he would be dead already. He could not move or dodge effectively, and his rotation would not work from the moment he got stuck in the swamp. Naruto and his clones simply had to throw their weapons or techniques at him. There was no way he could deflect them all. How can this be happening? I was born with the Byakugan, the prized bloodline of the Hyuga clan. I trained relentlessly to master the gentle fist. You couldn't even win properly against Kiba a month ago. How did you get so much stronger in such a short time? Those eyes of yours, Naruto replied. No matter how good they are, they can't see anyone's fate. They can't see anyone's talent. You think you know everything about me because of your eyes, but you don't. You don't know how hard I've worked, how much I've struggled. Neji's eyes widened slightly, remembering these words being repeated by his sensei and Lee. He remembered how Lee was able to wound Gaara. He had written it off as it was ultimately useless. But for that brief moment, Lee had burned brightly. Are you saying hard work can surpass destiny? That talents don't matter. I'm saying that destiny is what you make it, yeah. Nothing is set in stone. And no one can just look at you and decide if you're talented or not. By this point, Neji had ceased struggling since he knew it was futile. He was already knee-deep in the swamp. For so long, he believed that he knew the limitations of each person and that their struggles would not change their destiny. Naruto was starting to shake that belief. Neji sighed. He had a lot to think about. I forfeit, he announced. It was a formality at this point since he had no way out of Naruto's trap. The proctor stepped forward, raising his hand. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. The stadium erupted in applause. While Naruto may not be well loved by his village, the crowd included many visitors and ninja from other places. Anyone impartial would be impressed with Naruto's performance. He had also impressed many of Konoha's ninja as well. Well, what do you know, Asuma chuckled. Quite an upset. I'll say. Kurenai was equally impressed. I gave a thumbs up to the contestants. Naruto, you have shown the true power of youth through your determination. He turned to Neji, tears streaming down his face. Neji, you have also grown so much. Your resolve and spirit were magnificent. This is just another step in your path to even greater heights. Naruto made his way to the stands to where his fellow rookies were seated. Hey guys. How did you like that? Wasn't I awesome? And Hinata, I told you I'd kick his ass. Hinata blushed deeply. I didn't doubt you, Naruto, she said quietly. Naruto was touched at her vote of confidence. Did you hold back on me? Kiba blurted out, feeling a little upset. Well, no. I didn't. Naruto raised his hands defensively. So you're telling me that you learned all that? Kiba waved his hand at the mess that was the stadium in a month. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Yeah, pretty much. I know, I'm awesome. Suspicious is more like it, Ino chipped in. How can you get that good in a month? Why didn't you do it earlier then? Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, I had some help from Pervy Sage, and I used a lot of shadow clones for extra training. I worked really hard, believe it. Wait, who's Pervy Sage? Sakura cringed at the nickname. That old geezer over there. Naruto pointed towards Jiraiya's position in the cage box. Jiraiya, who saw him, gave him a jaunty wave. Who's that? I've never seen him before. Shikamaru frowned, trying to place the old man. I believe that is Jiraiya of the legendary Sanin, Shino said quietly. What? Sakura's head snapped toward the old man Naruto had just called a pervert. No way. Oh yeah. Naruto clapped his hands together, finally remembering his teacher's name. That was his name. After a month, it was embarrassing to ask again. Thanks, Shino. The genin just looked at Naruto in disbelief. Standing a little behind the group, Kabuto, disguised as an Anbu operative, caught every bit of that conversation. There's something you aren't revealing, Naruto. Lord Orochimaru would be most interested to know what that is. Naruto sighed impatiently as he waited for Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei to show up. He could feel the crowd's restlessness growing with each passing second. All of the fights in the first round were done except for Sasuke's. Since Sasuke was late, the other first round match had continued as planned, but now the audience was growing restless for the final match. The most interesting thing so far had been Shikamaru's upset win against Temari. Seriously, Naruto thought Shika was done for when he saw the Sand Girl's jutsu. Shika's last-minute win was nothing short of inspiring. It made up for the lame forfeit from that makeup dude from the sand. Speaking of, it must be awfully inconvenient for him to be cooped up inside that shell and carried around by a puppet. The guy chickened out, but he did have a cool jutsu. The proctor looked at his watch and sighed. He raised his hand. The grace period given to the Uchiha had run out. Since one of the contestants has failed to show up, this match is. At that precise moment, Kakashi and Sasuke materialized in the field in a swirl of wind and leaves. "So, what did I miss?" Kakashi asked cheerfully as he walked up to his fellow Jonin. He eyed the Anbu unit scattered throughout the stadium. The tension was thick. He was relieved that Lord Jiraiya was present next to the Hokage. It was clear that the sand was going to try something. "You know, having one of your students taught by a Sannin is kin to cheating," Asuma said with a grin. "A Sannin? Since when is Ibisu considered as one?" Kakashi asked innocently. "Oh, quit your act. There's no way you wouldn't have known." Kurenai snorted. "I'm not responsible if my student caught a lucky break and impressed a Sannin enough to be trained by him." Kakashi shrugged. "A bet, however, is still a bet." Asuma grumbled as he handed some of his money to Kakashi, who took it gleefully. Kurenai shook her head. Asuma never learned that betting against Kakashi was a fool's game. "So, tell me what exactly happened. I can see that Naruto is looking none the worse after his battle." Kakashi observed, impressed despite himself. He expected at least a few of his chakra points to have been blocked. He had received word that Jiraiya had started training Naruto on summoning techniques around 3 weeks ago, but he hadn't heard of the results of his training. "Yeah, Neji didn't touch him. Literally." Asuma chuckled. "I'm beginning to think the team assignment was ridiculously unfair this time. Those are not the skills of a last-place genin." "Well, people change. Lord Jiraiya himself was the last in his graduation class, I believe," Kakashi replied. "And the same goes for Guy." "That's right, Kakashi. Your student has shown that hard work can make all the difference in the world," Guy said, giving him a thumbs up. Kakashi noticed that the smile did not carry the usual enthusiasm. Lee's state was weighing down on him. Kakashi observed Naruto, who was chatting with his friends. It was hard to believe that he had defeated Neji so handily with just a month of training, but it was embarrassing for him to ask more at the moment. He could see Jiraiya shooting him a "we need to talk" look, so he assumed he'd get filled in soon enough if whatever the sand and sound had planned didn't stop it. Something big had happened with Naruto. Naruto watched as Sasuke dodged wave after wave of Gaara's attacks. Gaara hadn't moved from his place, letting his sand do all the work for him. Sasuke has his work cut out for him. Naruto saw that Gaara had enough chakra to do this the whole day and not get tired. Every time Sasuke tried to close the distance, Sasuke would be attacked from multiple directions by the sand. Viewing his rival through the Rinnegan, Naruto couldn't help but be impressed. Sasuke was very judicious in using his chakra reserves, which were not small by any measure. He was currently measuring Gaara's reaction time with well-timed attacks and last-second evasions. Suddenly, Gaara's voice cut through the air. "Sasuke-chan." He shouted, "You're starting to bore me. Entertain me more and you may live a little longer. You will help me prove my existence." Naruto cringed at the cliché-sounding proclamation. He has serious issues. Naruto recalled the way Gaara was acting when Guy-sensei saved Lee last week. At the same time, he felt an eerie similarity between Gaara's words and that of Haku. They both sounded like they didn't really have a reason to live. Sasuke was itching for some action as well and quickly flipped through the hand signs of the fire jutsu. Naruto paid close attention to the way Sasuke's chakra moved while performing the jutsu. The Rinnegan wasn't as good as the Sharingan for copying moves, but it helped Naruto get a better feel for each jutsu. Every time he saw one, it made him understand the chakra a little more, helping him get better bit by bit. The great ball of fire that Sasuke spit out made its way toward Gaara, who gave a creepy smile. A gigantic wave of sand blocked and extinguished the fireball before it could harm him. But at that exact moment, Sasuke appeared behind Gaara and hit him with a roundhouse kick. Naruto blinked. That was fast. He had a little trouble seeing it with his Rinnegan. His friends, however, were dumbstruck. To them, it was as if Sasuke had teleported. Gaara shot towards one of the side walls of the arena. A cushion of sand was already there waiting for him, absorbing the shock of the impact. Sasuke was already running towards Gaara while flipping through a new set of hand seals, which Naruto recognized to be that of a lightning-style jutsu. As he heard the familiar sound similar to the chirping of birds, Naruto sent Kakashi a look of betrayal. He should have taught me that, damn it. Gaara's hastily conjured sand shield could not hope to stop Sasuke's attack. The Chidori, a high-pitched chirping mass of lightning, sliced through the sand like it was nothing. Sasuke's hand, crackling with electricity, thrust forward, aiming directly at Gaara. "That's the second A-rank jutsu shown by a genin today," Asuma complained. "Second, huh? Did Lord Jiraiya teach Naruto the Rasengan?" Kakashi wondered. Suddenly, a scream of pain echoed through the arena. "My arm." Gaara howled as the Chidori connected with his left arm. Although he had managed to avoid the attack's intended target, his hand was now bleeding from the cut. Reacting quickly, he encased himself in a thick shield of sand. At that moment, Naruto could feel that something had changed. He noticed a very thin layer of chakra, almost like a fog, descending on the audience. Suddenly, everyone was starting to feel sleepy. Recognizing the descending yin chakra as a genjutsu, Naruto quickly agitated his chakra. He saw that a few of his friends had also fallen victim to the genjutsu and quickly moved to assist them. Naruto whipped his head around when he heard the sound of a high-pitched scream from Sakura. His blood froze when he saw that she was now unconscious and being carried by an Anbu operative. He who most definitely was not an Anbu if he pulled something like this. "Hey! Why did you attack her?" Naruto shouted, quickly creating several clones and charging toward the unknown Anbu. "Follow me and you might find out," said a condescending yet familiar voice from beneath the mask. The Anbu swiftly rushed out of the stadium, with Naruto hot on his heels. That almost sounded like Kabuto. Nah, can't be, Naruto thought, shaking his head as he continued the pursuit. "Naruto." Kakashi sprinted towards his student, recognizing the hostage tactic. They were probably trying to incapacitate the Jinchuriki before he became a problem. Before Kakashi could reach Naruto, 4 sound ninja materialized in front of him, surrounding him. "You will stay right here." One of them barked. Reacting swiftly, Kakashi uncovered his Sharingan and created a clone. The clone immediately began flipping through hand seals. Ninja art. Summoning. The clone called out, bringing forth Kakashi's faithful Rinnegan to track and pursue Naruto. Meanwhile, the original Kakashi went through the hand signs that Sasuke had used moments before. Lightning crackled around his hand as he prepared a Chidori, staring down the sound Jonin who encircled him. "I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I'm on a tight schedule. I'll have to cut this meeting short." Sasuke quickly dispelled the Genjutsu and scanned the area for the source. He saw the chaos unfolding around him. Sakura being kidnapped, Naruto giving chase, and Kakashi being intercepted. The Sand Team's Jonin sensei appeared in front of Gaara, flanked by his siblings. The proctor stepped forward, positioning himself in front of Sasuke to confront the Sand Ninja. "Kid, the exams are cancelled. As you probably figured out, Konoha is under attack from the sand and the sound. Follow that teammate of yours who got kidnapped. We'll handle things here." The proctor told him without taking his eyes off his enemy. Sasuke had questions, but this was not the time to ask them. With one last scathing look towards Gaara, he exited the stadium and followed after Sakura and Naruto. "So, Lord Kazekage," Hiruzen said, observing the chaos around them. He and Jiraiya were now stuck inside a barrier maintained by 4 unknown sound ninja. "It seems you decided to betray our trust." Jiraiya had earlier thwarted a sneak attack targeting him a moment before the chaos unfolded. So it seems." The Kazekage replied in a breezy tone. Hiruzen was immediately on high alert. This was not the Kazekage. How did he not notice this sooner? "It seems we're having a class reunion, Sarutobi-sensei. If only the princess were here. The 3 of us reunited to see the final moments of their teacher. Doesn't it bring a tear to your eye?" Hiruzen's eyes narrowed as he recognized the voice. Besides him, he could feel Jiraiya tense up. "Orochimaru, indeed. It's been a long time," Orochimaru said, tearing a mask off to reveal his snake-like features. "I thought it would be fitting for you to witness the end of Konoha at the hands of your former student. I was not expecting my foolish teammate to be present. With him stuck here, who is going to stop my summons from wreaking havoc outside, I wonder." Hiruzen looked grim. "Jiraiya, can you get outside?" "Not with the barrier set up the way it is and with old snake face here." Jiraiya sighed. "And I don't want to leave you here to face him. You underestimate me, Jiraiya." Hiruzen smiled. "It seems we'll have to make quick work of you, Orochimaru. Earth style. Mud river." Orochimaru was suddenly pushed into an enormous torrent of muddy water that originated without warning beneath the Hokage's feet. In another moment, a dragon's head emerged out of the mud and opened its jaw. Earth release. Earth dragon bullet. Fire release. Fire dragon bomb. Hiruzen performed 2 techniques in succession, igniting the stone bullets with explosive firepower and bombarding Orochimaru. Unfortunately, he could see that Orochimaru had already substituted himself with a mud clone. "Such impatience does not suit you," Sensei Orochimaru drawled, dodging a punch from Jiraiya by bending at an unnatural angle. His tongue shot out of his mouth, morphing into the shape of a snake. A blade extended from the snake's mouth, missing Jiraiya by a hair's breadth. Orochimaru swung the sword in a wide arc to ward off further attacks, his eyes gleaming with sinister delight as he flipped through some hand signs. "Summoning. Impure world reincarnation." Orochimaru said gleefully, slapping his palm on a roof tile. The ground beneath him glowed ominously as he completed the summoning. "Shit." Jiraiya swore, recognizing the technique. He quickly clasped his hands together. "Fire style. Inferno wave. Earth style. Planet splitter." Hiruzen followed up immediately. Jiraiya's destructive sea of fire surged forward, merging with Hiruzen's earth-splitting technique to create a destructive field of lava. The combined force of their jutsus crashed into Orochimaru's summoning circle, creating a massive explosion. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring their vision and sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The ground trembled under the impact, and everything was shrouded in a thick cloud of smoke and rubble. As the dust began to settle, the outlines of 5 coffins became visible through the haze. 2 of the coffins had taken the brunt of the explosion, but 3 of them remained relatively intact, standing eerily amidst the destruction. Orochimaru's voice cut through the settling dust, filled with twisted glee. "I must commend your quick reflexes, but these 3 will be more than sufficient." The coffin lids creaked open, revealing the forms of 3 shinobi. 2 of them were male and were clad in ancient armor, while the third was a woman with bright red hair that was arranged in buns with hairpins in them. She had a blue rhombus marking on her forehead. 2 tags were hanging from her hair buns. Jiraiya quickly positioned himself beside the Hokage and swore when he got a good look at the summoned shinobi. "This is gonna be quite troublesome." He immediately performed a summoning technique. A giant magenta-colored toad had materialized beside him, with 2 swords strapped to its waist. "You'll have to hold off any attacks for a while, old friend," Jiraiya said as he clasped his hands together as if to pray. Gamaken's eyes widened as he looked at the opposition. He gulped. "I'll try, but you know that I'm clumsy." The third Hokage was shaking in rage. "You don't even leave the dead to rest." Orochimaru simply chuckled darkly, enjoying his teacher's rage. "Is that you, Hiruzen? And Jiraiya?" the woman asked, tilting her head. She looked around and looked surprised to see her 2 companions. "Are we summoned here by your technique, dear brother-in-law?" she asked the white-haired man beside her. "It appears so," the man replied, but there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I never imagined." "Oh, didn't you?" the woman asked in a deceptively calm tone. "I was sure I had warned you against this technique. Several times, in fact. I warned him too." The third man, who had long black hair, joined in accusingly. "But does he ever listen to us?" "No, of course not." "Typical. As amusing as it is to see your family reunion." Orochimaru chuckled. "You have a village to destroy and students to kill. Specifically, your village and your students. A pipe dream." The woman sighed, forming a few hand signs. However, she was forced to stop midway. We can't have that, can we, Lady Mito? You will do exactly as I tell you," Orochimaru said smugly. "I always knew that you were a rotten apple, Orochimaru." Mito Uzumaki muttered, her face darkening as she recognized her summoner. She could see that both of the Senju brothers were also facing similar difficulties breaking out of the jutsu. It seems they were significantly weakened so that the jutsu could hold them. This was both a good thing and a bad thing. Senju Hashirama sighed, giving up his efforts to escape from the jutsu. Sensing his chakra, he felt as if he was back to being a teenager. He couldn't resist as the shinobi called Orochimaru plunged a kunai infused with seals into his skull. He could feel his personality becoming muted and his will diminishing as if he were watching his body from a distant place. Hiruzen quickly reined in his emotions and summoned the Monkey King, getting ready for a serious battle. Once the reanimated shinobi were out of their coffins, there wasn't much you could do to stop the jutsu. All he could do was to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. A moment later, chains made of pure chakra exploded out of Mito, intending to skewer Jiraiya. At the same time, the Hokage was assaulted by a veritable hail of earth and water bullets. The chakra chain collided with Gamaken's shield, though the sheer force of the impact pushed him back. Jiraiya quickly hopped onto Gamaken's back. Taking the cue, the toad leaped into the air, creating some distance between them and the reanimated shinobi. Hiruzen had erected a sturdy mud wall that was taking most of the damage from the barrage of water bullets. However, the wall was destroyed by a powerful jet of water in the next moment. Wood style. Deep forest emergence. The first Hokage slammed his palm to the ground. Ninjutsu. Bringer of darkness. The second Hokage followed up with his own signature jutsu. The world was encased in darkness as fast-moving roots approached to bind Jiraiya and Hiruzen. "Ah, shit. Who turned off the lights?" Jiraiya cursed in dismay. Naruto felt a strange chill as he chased after the unknown Anbu who had captured Sakura. He sneaked a look behind him and blanched when he saw that a portion of the sky above the stadium had turned pitch black. A dark purple rip could be found in the sky and he saw some things being pulled out of the rip. "Are those ghosts?" Naruto thought apprehensively. For a moment, he deactivated the Rinnegan. The sky was now clear with no trace of the abnormalities. When he activated it again, the eerie sight could be seen again. Something bad is happening there. I have to hurry back, Naruto thought to himself. He boosted his speed to the fastest he could, but he could not catch up to the Anbu. In another moment, the Anbu stopped in a small clearing. Sensing the confrontation, Naruto stopped as well. "Oi, bastard. Give back Sakura," he yelled. "Oh, believe me, I have no use for this deadweight," the Anbu chuckled. Sakura was slumped against his shoulder, unconscious. If you answer some of my questions, I might consider your request. What do you want to know from me? I'm just a genin," Naruto declared. However, his mind was racing. Did that guy know something? He was definitely not a Konoha ninja. Was it a spy? Playing innocent the first see. A pity. Remember, you caused this. In a flash, the Anbu's hands glowed green. He struck Sakura in the heart and held her up by her throat. Naruto froze. He could see that the strike had done something. Sakura's heartbeat was stopping. She will die soon. The Anbu said carelessly. Should I let her suffer a slow death, her heart stopping little by little, or, he squeezed his hand that was holding Sakura by her neck. Should I just end her misery right now? Saw Sakura. Naruto screamed, his voice becoming guttural with raw fury. Panic and rage surged through him. The thought of losing Sakura, his teammate and friend, was unbearable. His vision blurred with tears of helplessness, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The sage's Jinjutsu still showed his eyes as deep blue, but his Rinnegan had bled into a red color, with the iris becoming pitch black and slit-like. The transformation mirrored the storm of emotions inside him. Rage, fear, and desperation all coalesced into a singular, burning focus. He felt a familiar yet strange sensation, as if his very soul was reacting to his anguish. Anshin-ten, Naruto whispered, his palm extending towards the Anbu operative. Naruto's opponent was suddenly pulled towards him as if he was yanked in by a rope. A fraction of a second later, he found that his own throat was enclosed within the Jinchuriki's hand. Well, we seem to be at an impasse. The Anbu chuckled, although he was struggling to breathe through Naruto's chokehold. In response, he began to tighten his grip on Sakura's throat as well. Let's not get too excited, shall we? Your friend's life hangs in a balance, after all. His mind was racing. Had Naruto Uzumaki developed a new bloodline limit? He did not know of any existing techniques that could pull someone like this. He was not too concerned, however. He had the upper hand as long as he had the girl. Besides, the boy was merely a genin. Tell me what I want to know, Naruto. Things will be a lot smoother that way. Ninjin. Naruto said quietly. That was the last thing Kabuto Yakushi, spy of Orochimaru and former root operative, heard in this life. In another moment, his grip on Sakura loosened and the limp body of Kabuto fell to the ground. Naruto fell backward as well, the jutsu taking its toll on him. A young boy wakes up on a battlefield, bleeding from his head. A woman kneels beside him, gently lifting him up. He opens his eyes, confused, unable to remember anything. In an orphanage, the boy smiles as another child places a helmet on his head. The woman, whom he called mother, hands him a pair of glasses. His face lights up with gratitude as he sees clearly for the first time. The boy is given the name Kabuto, which meant helmet. Although unimaginative, it was something he cherished and one of the happiest memories of his life. The boy, now older, listens secretly to a tense conversation. A one-eyed man demands an orphan for a secret organization from mother. The boy steps forward, volunteering, despite the protests from others. The boy stands over a fallen woman, realizing with horror that she is mother and he has hurt her. He tries to heal her, tears streaming down his face, but she doesn't recognize him. Who was he then, if mother did not recognize him? The snake-like man approaches the boy, offering a new path. The boy attacks in anger, but stops when the man begins to reveal dark secrets related to his past. How his life and his mother's, he finds a twisted form of comfort in the stranger's words and decides to start anew. In a dark lab, the boy assists the sinister figure, surrounded by medical equipment and strange experiments. His eyes show a mix of fascination and determination as he works. Now a young man, he travels with his new mentor as he joins a new organization. His mentor attacks his teammate and is defeated with a powerful ocular jutsu. He listens to his mentor's plans to attack his former home village. He shares the intel he had as a spy. He watches as his underlings ambush and kill the Kazekage. Naruto. Wake up. Naruto groaned as he was shaken awake. As consciousness returned to him, he jolted up, remembering what had happened. Hey Kakashi-sensei. Naruto saw that he was being held by his sensei. He looked around frantically and found that Sakura was slumped against a tree. Sakura. She's alive. Just unconscious. Kabuto had slowed down her heart, but I managed to get it back to its normal pace again. Kakashi informed him. I got here as you were passing out. What happened? Naruto held his head as a rush of memories filled him when he heard the name Kabuto. He didn't know what the fuck happened, but he was remembering bits and pieces of the traitor's life. The Anbu was Kabuto, and he had killed him. Is Kabuto? Naruto asked hesitantly. He had realized that the spy Anbu was Kabuto, the one who had guided them in the forest of death. Dead? Kakashi informed him, looking carefully at his reaction. We need to speak about that too. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. You may have realized this, but we are at war, Naruto. Naruto's face crumpled when he realized that he had just killed someone. The Rinnegan had done something. Some abilities of the Rinnegan may reveal themselves at times of great distress, the old man sage had told him. Somehow, the anger and fear he felt when he realized that Sakura was about to die triggered this ability. He had somehow absorbed Kabuto's soul. It creeped him out when he thought about it. As he sat there, he was remembering more and more of Kabuto's life. That guy was seriously messed up, Naruto whispered. Is this root thing still present in our village, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi stiffened. How do you know about that, Naruto? I absorbed Kabuto's soul. Naruto whispered. I somehow got a bloodline limit during my training. The old man Hokage asked me to keep quiet about it, but it somehow acted on its own and absorbed that guy's soul. When he was about to kill Sakura, Naruto shivered, revulsion stirring within him. He felt as if his very core had been tainted by the experience. What's happening to me? I'm remembering Kabuto's life. I'm getting his memories. He muttered, his voice trembling. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the rising fear and confusion. I didn't want this, I didn't mean to. Kakashi was still in shock when he heard what the bloodline limit could do. Even in legends, he had not heard of an ability like this. To pluck someone's soul out as if it were a fruit hanging from a tree, he shivered at the implications. Thankfully, Naruto was not someone who would go mad with that kind of power. Get a hold of yourself, Naruto. He said, gripping the boy's shoulder. Kabuto's actions have harmed countless people and are killing the people of Konoha as we speak. You stopped him from doing more damage. Now, Kakashi stood up. We will speak in more detail once this is over. Get Sakura to the hospital. He saw that Sasuke had just arrived at the scene. Sasuke, accompany Naruto to the hospital. Sakura was attacked. After that, the two of you are to go to the academy and help with the evacuation of the academy students. Sasuke looked ready to protest, but Naruto beat him to it. Kakashi-sensei, they're gonna use Gaara to let Shukaku the One-Tail loose in the village. Naruto blurted out, remembering that crucial information from the barrage of memories he got from Kabuto. Kakashi felt his blood freeze at the revelation. Change of plans. Naruto, create a few shadow clones. Our clones will get Sakura to the hospital. He created his own clone. The three of us will follow Gaara's team. Sasuke frowned, unsure how Naruto got that piece of information. He was probably missing some context, seeing as there was a dead Anbu lying next to Naruto. Should we aim to kill the Sand Ninja? He asked Kakashi. Unfortunately, yes. Kakashi sighed. We cannot afford to hold back in this situation, especially towards Gaara. If he releases the tailed beast, the village would be in a lot of trouble. You've all been very hush-hush regarding him. What's his secret? Sasuke demanded. Naruto said something about a one-tail. Gaara has a tailed beast, a demonic creature filled with chakra similar to the 9 tails, sealed within him. Kakashi explained. It seems they are going to release the beast within Konoha. And how did you know about this? Sasuke asked, facing Naruto. The Anbu guy gloated about it before Kakashi-sensei came and finished him off. Naruto said, without missing a beat. Sasuke would not accept any other answer without questions. Sasuke didn't seem entirely convinced, but a glare from Kakashi intimidated him into subordination. Akin, follow our clones and warn them of any danger. Kakashi said. Naruto looked on curiously as a small dog came forward and saluted Kakashi. Now, Team 7, move out. Kakashi dashed towards the direction they had seen Gaara go, with Naruto and Sasuke following closely behind him. As they moved towards Gaara's location, Naruto's mind processed other earth-shattering revelations from Kabuto's memories. Hang in there, old man. He now knew what he had seen was probably a result of Orochimaru's jutsu. He didn't know how strong the previous Hokage were, but he was comforted that Jiraiya was with the old man, even if things went south. He also had to inform them about the shady organization that was targeting him and his fellow Jinchuriki. As Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke raced through the forest, tracking Gaara's trail, Naruto's mind was still processing the flood of memories and knowledge he had involuntarily inherited from Kabuto. Among the chaotic torrent of information, the first thing that he focused on was their most immediate concern. Gaara. His past stood out thanks to its similarities with him. Another Jinchuriki ostracized by their village, but Gaara's case was much, much worse than his. Kabuto was all about messing with people's heads to use it against them. As a spy, he observed how people behaved and understood the motives for their actions. For example, Gaara's dad, the Kazekage, saw his son as nothing more than a broken weapon. From day one, Gaara was treated like a tool, just a container for the one-tailed beast. When it was clear that Gaara was struggling to suppress the Shukaku, the Kazekage sent assassins, including Gaara's own uncle, to test him. If they killed him, it meant Gaara was a failure. No wonder Gaara is so messed up. Naruto wished he could do something to help Gaara. But Kakashi-sensei wanted them to aim for the kill, to minimize casualties. The whole situation was seriously screwed up. To make the situation worse, the old man, the third Hokage, was facing off against the previous Hokage and even the first Hokage's wife, who was a Jinchuriki of the 9 tails like him. Her name was Mito Uzumaki, and she was a powerful kunoichi with insane chakra and sealing skills. Kabuto had always suspected Naruto really was the same clan as her, figuring Naruto was probably in Uzumaki too. His last name could be a ruse to throw people off, but given the fact that he was a Jinchuriki and had a huge amount of chakra, it was possible that he was one. The thing was though, almost all Uzumaki had bright red hair. Naruto's hair color actually resembled the Yamanaka or the late 4th Hokage. But Kabuto had ruled out that Naruto was related to the 4th after seeing his performance in the first round of the Chunin exams. Naruto was deeply insulted. Another big problem he learned of from Kabuto was within the village itself. That was a guy called Danzo, who was the old man's teammate. The guy ran Root, a shady underground Anbu unit that did a lot of dirty work. Danzo's methods were brutal and underhanded, training his subordinates to be emotionless tools and even having them kill each other. Naruto felt that this was somewhat similar to what Gaara's father was doing. It was like these bastards got off of making other people suffer. Naruto couldn't believe the 3rd Hokage was letting someone like Danzo run his own secret Anbu. It just didn't make sense. Danzo's links to Orochimaru made the situation worse. They worked together on some sick experiments on people. The Hokage was seemingly not aware of the extent Danzo had sunk to. But Danzo was stabbing the village in the back right now by not lifting a finger while Konoha was being attacked. Kabuto suspected that the man wanted to be Hokage himself and was using the invasion as an excuse to get rid of Hiruzen. He really had to tell the old man about this, but it was not as urgent as what they were doing now. He looked at Sasuke as he unconsciously ran his hand over Orochimaru's curse mark. Naruto shivered. Even Kabuto did not know what the curse seal did exactly. Orochimaru designed it way back and had put it on his student, Anko, the crazy snake lady from the Forest of Death. But he had modified it based on some experiments conducted on some kid named Juugo, who could passively absorb nature chakra. The cursed seal replicated this and made someone stronger because of it, but their mind becomes unstable because of the overload of nature chakra. However, Orochimaru had many secrets inside the cursed seal that no one else was privy to. Naruto watched the seal with his Rinnegan, trying to understand how it worked. He could see that there was a silver of chakra imbibed in the seal, but that looked too small to be this nature chakra that Kabuto knew about. It seemed that only sages could sense nature chakra, so maybe the Rinnegan couldn't see it. He was going to have to ask the pervy sage about this. What Naruto had gleaned from Kabuto was that Orochimaru had a creepy hobby. Body swapping. And guess who was up next on his wishlist? Sasuke. Orochimaru was eyeballing Sasuke's body like it was the last piece of cake at a birthday party. The plan? Stoke the fires of Sasuke's family drama, then swoop in with promises of power-ups and new abilities basically like Con Man. Naruto knew he had to tell this to Kakashi. There was no way he was going to let Team 7's resident brooder get turned into Orochimaru's newest toy. The bastard might be a pain in the ass, but he was his teammate, damn it. Sasuke shot him a weird glance, clearly wondering why Naruto kept staring at him. Naruto quickly snapped his gaze back to the road, filing away his questions for a less life-threatening moment. Speaking of Sasuke's brother, Itachi took the whole rebellious phase to an extreme by wiping out his entire clan, sparing only Sasuke, and then deciding to hang out with a group called the Akatsuki. These guys weren't your average book club. Nope, they were a full-blown bent-on world domination terrorist organization, aiming to extract the chakra of tailed beasts from Jinchurikis like Gaara and Naruto. Now aware of them, Naruto was understandably a bit on edge. The gang included a puppet enthusiast named Sasori, the moody psychopath Itachi, and a water-loving shark dude named Kisame from the Hidden Mist. Orochimaru knew about Akatsuki's leader, but Kabuto was not told who that was. But all of them were super strong ninja. As Kakashi's clone and Naruto's clones rushed to drop the unconscious Akura at the hospital, Kakashi's clone quickly turned to Naruto's. "What did you get from Kabuto about the Sound Village's plan?" he asked urgently. Naruto's clone scratched his head, recalling the details. Kabuto was gonna help summon a bunch of giant snakes in the village. With him out of the picture, the snake threat won't be so bad I guess. But Orochimaru was talking about waking up some old cage using something called impure world reincarnation. Kakashi's face went white. Resurrect the past cage. Are they going to summon the first, second and fourth? I think so. Orochimaru said something about having some trouble getting hold of the fourth. But he planned to summon the first and second Hokage, the first's wife Mito Uzumaki, and 2 cage from other villages. He thinks that some of the summonings may be stopped by the Hokage and Jiraiya, but the remaining should be enough. Kakashi felt a kind of primal fear when he heard that the first Hokage was going to be summoned. He had listened to his father's stories about him, which were from his grandfather who had actually seen the guy. The first Hokage and Madara Uchiha were regarded as gods on Earth, their clashes often causing maps to be redrawn due to the sheer scale of it. The wood style was one of the most feared bloodline limit at that time for a reason. The second Hokage was also a formidable force to deal with. He didn't know much about Mito Uzumaki, other than the fact that she was rumored to be the container of the 9 tails at her time. That made her a formidable shinobi as well. Depending on which past cage of the other villages were involved, there was a significant cause of concern there as well. Seeing Kakashi paling rapidly, Naruto hurried on to add. But he's only gonna revive them at a fraction of their full power. Something about Orochimaru wanting to make sure that they won't break out of his control. Well, that's a relief, Kakashi sighed. This should at least be manageable for the third Hokage and Lord Jiraiya. What else? The sound guys are attacking all over the place, Naruto explained. They're hitting the main gates, the academy, and even the hospital. They plan to stretch us out and mess everything up before they're stopped. Kakashi's clone nodded, processing the information. With Kabuto out, we've cut off a good part of their plan, but we can't let our guard down. Orochimaru might be the greatest threat, and the revived cage could turn the tide. Thankfully, Lord Jiraiya is with the Hokage. We'll see what we can do once we get Sakura to safety. Kakashi paused, suddenly curious. If you absorbed all of Kabuto's memories, do you gain any of his skills? Well, it's complicated. Naruto frowned. I know a lot of stuff about medical ninjutsu now, but I don't feel like I can do them yet. My chakra control is piss poor because of the huge amount of chakra I have. Even though I got the water walking exercise down and I've started learning elemental jutsu, I'll need to control it much better than that to handle medical ninjutsu. And even if I did, it'll take a lot of practice to get it down, I guess. That makes sense. Kakashi nodded. Still, your bloodline is incredible, Naruto. I haven't heard of anything like it before. I would like to know more details about it, but now is not the time. Yeah, I know. Naruto nodded. Pervy Sage told me that he had a student a long time ago who had this bloodline. It's incredibly rare, he said. Well, it's good that Lord Jiraiya knows about it. Kakashi was relieved. That makes things a lot simpler. Did he mention what clan that student was from? Funnily enough, Pervy Sage said that guy was in Uzumaki too. But he said this is not a bloodline of the Uzumaki clan as far as he knew. Of course, Naruto knew why he got the Rinnegan from the sage's explanation. But that did not explain how this Nagato guy got it. That's strange. Kakashi hummed. From my understanding, the Uzumaki bloodline limit is their strong chakra, thick enough to be solidified and morphed into objects. Kakashi was scarce on the details, as this was not the time or the place to talk about Naruto's mother. That checks up with what Kabuto knew about my clan as well. Naruto nodded. But no one ever told me I'm from such a big clan. Well, the Uzumaki were unfortunately wiped out in the Second Shinobi War, with only a handful of survivors. Kakashi consoled him. The fear against the clan is still prevalent in some of the villages that destroyed them. It's probably for your own safety that you were never confirmed to be of the same clan, Naruto. Utakano has strong ties with them, many would think you were named in honor of the clan. As you don't have their red hair, people would write off your name as a coincidence. Hiding in plain sight, huh? Naruto nodded in understanding. You knew who my parents were, sensei? He asked hopefully. Kakashi sighed. I did, but I am forbidden from revealing it, Naruto. Perhaps the Hokage himself will reveal it when the time is right. Just know that they loved you deeply and were heroes of this village. That means a lot, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said quietly, trying to absorb the weight of everything he'd just learned. The knowledge of his clan, his parents, and the history behind his lineage was overwhelming. The knowledge filled him with an overwhelming sense of connection, of belonging he had craved all his life. Most comforting of all was the assurance that his parents had cherished him deeply, a stark contrast to Gaara's painful upbringing. This realization, that he was truly loved from the start, warmed him from within, soothing some of the old aches in his heart. Jiraiya held on to Gamaken, while the samurai toad expertly dodged Mito Uzumaki's chakra chains. He was thankful that Gamaken could sense the attacks easily, as the toads used nature chakra and their senses were heightened without requiring a special sage mode. Lady Mito was probably using her chakra sensing abilities to guess their position, since Tobirama's technique also stripped sight from his allies. The technique was mainly intended to target the third Hokage, since his senses were not as sharp as they were in his prime. Lord Jiraiya, she is persistent, Gamaken commented as two sets of chains flanked them and curled around them. The toad leaped away at the last second, firing a water bullet towards his opponent. Yeah, but I'm glad she's nowhere near her full power. Jiraiya shivered. Although she may not have been mentioned as much as Lord's first and second Hokage, she would easily be stronger than any of the shinobi currently alive. I'll count my blessings. Gamaken sighed, leaping sideways as another chain impaled the air where he occupied a moment ago. But don't you think this pattern of attack is a little predictable? He asked in a low voice. Yeah, I picked up on that too. Jiraiya replied in a low voice. If my suspicions are correct, I think Orochimaru may have underestimated Lady Mito a bit too much. Gamaken's eye widened. Then I'll continue what I'm doing, giving both of you a little more time. Jiraiya glanced furtively at where the third Hokage was facing his two predecessors. A few minutes more, sensei. He was glad Orochimaru was fully occupied in his efforts to control the three reanimated shinobi. If he too joined the fray, Hiruzen may be in serious trouble. Hiruzen swung his adamantine staff in a broad sweep, shattering the roots Hashirama had directed at him through his wood style. He was grateful that this incarnation of Lord Hashirama was considerably weakened. He would have been unable to face the full strength of such techniques, known to restrain even the tailed beasts. Detecting a surge of water-nature chakra, Hiruzen thrust his staff towards Hashirama, using his body as a pivot to swiftly maneuver out of the incoming attack's path. Once repositioned, Hiruzen did not dare let up his momentum. He quickly gathered his chakra and unleashed a powerful fire release. Dragon Fire Technique. A colossal stream of fire erupted from his mouth, roaring towards Hashirama with intense heat. The fire met a barrier of thick vines and leaves conjured by Hashirama's reflexive defense, creating a sizzling clash of elements. Once again, Hiruzen used his staff to move from his location. As expected, a deadly stream of water sliced through his earlier location and missed him by a hair's breadth. "Why don't you seal them away, Sarutobi?" Enma asked, taking advantage of the brief respite. "That would be a temporary solution." Hiruzen agreed. "However, what is sealed can be unsealed unless one is willing to raise the stakes." While he spoke, he turned the battleground into a swamp to immobilize his opponents. In response, Hashirama quickly employed his wood style to construct a platform over the swamp, effectively shielding the entire arena. Hiruzen then spun his staff, skillfully deflecting a barrage of water bullets that the second had launched at him. "Higher stakes?" Enma inquired. "There is one place where they would be permanently sealed. I believe you can guess where, old friend." "No." Enma protested. "Don't speak of such a sacrifice so lightly. Jiraiya seems to be preparing himself for using the sage arts. We will stop them together once he is ready." To Enma's relief, Hiruzen agreed. "It seems that it will not be necessary. Orochimaru has made a grave mistake in his calculations." He raised his staff suddenly as the sword of Kusanagi leapt at him from the darkness, intending to pierce him. "A mistake?" Orochimaru chuckled. "Tell me, sensei, what mistake did I make this time? You will realize it soon enough." Hiruzen suppressed a smile. "If you think that clown senjutsu will be enough to stop us, I will have to burst that feeble hope." Orochimaru chuckled darkly. "My summons have limitless chakra and their bloodlines are potent. Perhaps I should stop toying with you too and instruct my summons to step things up. What do you say, sensei?" Orochimaru clasped his hands together to form a ram seal. Mito Uzumaki smiled triumphantly as she felt the last bit of control Orochimaru had on her vanish. The moment she had learned of Tobirama Senju's impure world reincarnation technique was the moment she started her work on countering it. A technique such as that would be disastrous in the wrong hands, and there was nothing more horrifying than having to come back to the world of the living only to murder your former comrades and loved ones. Originally, Tobirama developed this jutsu to counter the Uchiha threat prior to the founding of the Hidden Leaf Village, during a time when the Senju and Uchiha were fierce adversaries. Back then, the safeguarding of such a dangerous technique was simpler. It was entrusted only to those within the Senju clan who bore a deep-seated vendetta against the Uchiha, ensuring it stayed out of enemy hands. However, the power of the technique had somehow made Tobirama obsessed with it. A technique that should have been forgotten with the Warring States era hence made a resurgence in the First Shinobi War, with Tobirama using captured spies to reanimate his enemies to fight against their villages. Such a technique was a double-edged sword. There was no guarantee that that sword would not be pointed against Konoha. However, Tobirama was adamant in documenting it in the Forbidden Scroll of Seals, intending it to be used solely by his direct successors, under the most dire circumstances. How Orochimaru gained access to the technique, she would not know. However, she had considered such an eventuality and had decided to defend herself against being manipulated. She prided herself in reaching the pinnacle of Uzumaki's sealing arts due to the technique she had developed to counter it. The Soul Seal. A normal seal had to be inscribed in a piece of paper or a solid object. Uzumaki had gone a step beyond and had learned sealing art so thoroughly that they could infuse sealing formula into anything. Even chakra itself. She had taken the logical next step. Chakra disappeared after death, merging and becoming one with nature. However, what about a sealing formula inscribed onto one's very soul? The soul seal was painstaking to develop. She did know a lot about the mechanisms of souls due to some of the more notorious Uzumaki of the past. The ones that had tamed the death god and forced it into a contract. Leaning on those studies, she understood and hypothesized the structure of the soul and found the point in the human body where one would be able to access it. In ancient literature, it was referred to as Sahasrara, the gate of heaven, and was located at the crown of the head. It was located above the 8 physical gates and was the path through which the soul left the body and traveled to the afterlife. Forming a seal around the hypothesized location of the Sahasrara was tricky since it was almost impossible to locate it as a human. However, it looked like the ancient scriptures were correct and her seal had finally worked. "Thank you for buying me some time, Jiraiya." Mito Uzumaki's voice cut through the darkness. You'll have to teach me what you did, Lady Mito, Jiraiya smirked, his eyes already toad-like after accepting the influx of nature chakra. But I believe we have a battle to finish. Mito smiled back. Do you know, Jiraiya, that a bridge goes both ways? She flipped through some hand signs and latched onto the link that Orochimaru had used to control her for so long. It seems that Orochimaru has not learned this simple truth. Jiraiya's eye widened. You mean, indeed, yes. Mito completed her hand signs and exerted her will, intending to turn the tables on her summoner. Looks like I went sage mode for nothing. Jiraiya muttered, a little disappointed. Orochimaru froze. He was just about to command the 3 reanimated shinobi to tear into their opponents without prejudice. He had enjoyed toying with his opponents, but he had to get on with destroying the village. However, the moment when he moved his chakra to command his subordinates when he realized that something was not quite right, he felt a disturbance in the link between himself and Mito Uzumaki. What is she? Orochimaru's body went rigid. At that moment, the darkness that permeated their surroundings vanished and the Hokages stopped their attacks. Fascinating. The third Hokage relaxed marginally, seeing Orochimaru's plight. I never believed this would be possible. Orochimaru tried to resist as his body moved against his will. What is happening? Hiruzen watched a hand seals his former student was forced to perform with a twinge of amusement. Did you not tell me that you wanted to learn all the jutsu in the world, Orochimaru? I believe you will quite like this one. How is that hag controlling me? Orochimaru hissed. I summoned her. Lady Mito was always a cautious type, Hiruzen remarked. She always feared Lord Second's reanimation technique. When someone of her caliber dedicates herself to developing a counter for it, you can be sure that it would be quite impressive. He chuckled. What is this technique? Orochimaru said in fear. These are not the hand seals to release the resurrection. It seems Lady Mito is seeking a permanent solution. Hiruzen humored his old student. Tell me, Orochimaru, do you understand why the Uzumaki were so feared that entire nations conspired to obliterate them from existence? Orochimaru's eyes flickered with irritation and helplessness as he continued to be puppeteered through the sequence of hand signs. Spare me your cryptic musings, old man, he hissed through clenched teeth. The tales of the past aren't mere folklore, especially when they speak of an Uzumaki who dared to bind the death god itself within his seal, striking a fearsome pact. Cease your rambling, Orochimaru snarled, attempting to dismiss the legend. But history becomes a legend when it is too vast to be believed, Hiruzen countered smoothly. Consider this, Orochimaru. The pact was a contract of sacrifice. The Uzumaki summoner traded his own soul to ensure his foes would perish alongside him, sealed within the belly of the death god. This is the ultimate finality. Haven't you wondered how the great hero of this village stopped the nine-tailed fox 13 years ago? As the weight of Hiruzen's words settled, a chilling realization dawned on Orochimaru, making his blood run cold. You mean to say she's compelling me to summon? Just then, Orochimaru's hands, moving beyond his control, clapped together in completion of the jutsu. A profound, otherworldly chill swept through the air as he felt a sinister presence coalesce behind him. Turning slowly, a pulse of dread tightening in his chest, Orochimaru's eyes met a ghastly sight. Emerging from the swirling shadows was a colossal, spectral entity, its gaunt, skeletal form draped in tattered robes darker than the deepest abyss. These robes fluttered as if stirred by an unseen wind. Tormented cries reached his ear, whispering tales of anguish and eternal captivity. The dim light of the surroundings seemed to shy away, swallowed by the darkness of its enigmatic presence. Shinigami, Orochimaru said in a hoarse whisper. It was the form of a being that he feared the most from the moment he was informed of the death of his parents. Orochimaru was gripped by a profound terror that he had never experienced before. His lifelong pursuit of power and immortality was about to culminate in the most meaningless way possible, where not just defeat, but total obliteration of his soul awaited. Orochimaru's body trembled violently as the death god began to extract his soul. The cold, inexorable pull felt like hooks tearing through his spirit, each tug evoking agony that seemed to erode his very being. Panic surged through him, the primal fear that he might cease to exist, that all his schemes and betrayals would end in futility. His eyes, wide with the raw fear of oblivion, darted frantically, seeking an escape. At that moment, they landed in the sword of Kusanagi, his most prized possession. Orochimaru exerted his overwhelming will to live on the legendary sword, and it responded to his command. In one swift motion, it flew towards Mito Uzumaki, who had her hands clasped together in concentration. Jiraiya could not react quickly enough. The sword impaled the Uzumaki matriarch, momentarily disrupting her concentration. Orochimaru immediately flipped through the seals to undo the reanimation. Impure world reincarnation. Release. Orochimaru commanded. There was a tense pause before light slowly began to envelop the 3 reincarnated shinobi, signaling the dissolution of the jutsu. The technique disrupted, the Shinigami wavered for a moment before dissolving to nothingness. Mito turned to the Senju brothers, her expression resolute. I shall join the two of you after I conclude matters here, she declared. Her hands began weaving through a new series of intricate seals. As she finished, the light that had signified her release slowly dimmed and vanished. Orochimaru, his eyes widening in alarm and confusion, watched her intently. After a moment, the light signifying her release faded. Orochimaru looked at her, more than a little alarmed. Without warning, a surge of chakra burst forth from Mito. Chains, glowing with an eerie, ethereal light, erupted from her form, hurtling towards Orochimaru. They wrapped around him in a flash, and a complex sealing formula began to crawl along the chains like a living entity. The symbols pulsed with power, converging upon a bound Orochimaru, freezing him in place as they spread through his body. Hashirama gave Mito an understanding smile and turned to the third Hokage. "Sarutobi," he said, finally free to talk to his old student. "You've protected the village well. Yet, as the leaves turn, so too must the Hokage's mantle pass. Consider this in the times to come." Aburama nodded. "I see that you have carried this heavy burden far longer than the two of us, my old friend. I know that you will find a worthy successor." "It was not my intention to continue so long," Hiruzen said, his voice heavy with emotion. "My successor had unfortunately fallen more than a decade ago. However, I will keep your words in mind, sensei. Times of peace had dulled my urgency in finding a worthy candidate." The two past Hokage smiled and allowed the reanimation to be fully released. Their physical forms turned to dust. Two emaciated corpses fell to the ground, both wearing headbands with sound insignia. His own subordinates, Jiraiya spat, his voice tinged with contempt and a hint of sorrow for not recognizing Orochimaru's treachery sooner. As expected from a man who wouldn't flinch at killing children. Mito's gaze hardened at Jiraiya's words, a spark of fury igniting in her eyes. "Explain," she demanded, her voice steady but filled with an icy resolve. "He kidnapped and experimented on children of our village and fled when he was discovered." Jiraiya's expression darkened as he recounted the sins of his former comrade. He winced slightly as he noticed the ominous red glow beginning to emanate from Mito's eye, her chakra swelling with a palpable intensity that threatened to engulf them all. "What experiments?" The fury simmering beneath her words was palpable. Jiraiya hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. "He attempted to create children capable of using wood release by implanting them with your husband's cells," he confessed, his voice grim. As he spoke, the air around them thickened, charged with Mito's escalating fury. Jiraiya found himself struggling to breathe under the oppressive force of her killing intent, which now surged like a storm around her. "You." Mito's voice was a menacing growl, her gaze locking onto Orochimaru. A shroud of red chakra enwrapped her, solidifying into an ominous aura as she raised her palm towards him. The chakra swirling around her condensed into a dense, dark orb at the center of her palm. "You dared to kill the children of Konoha. To defile my husband's remains." The air around her seemed to crackle and vibrate as chakra continued to coalesce in front of her palm. The dense chakra sphere grew steadily, its roiling surface accumulating more power. As the sphere reached its full potency, it hummed with destructive energy, and a miniature black sun of raw power was poised above her hand. "Jiraiya, take Hiruzen and summon yourself out of this barrier," she commanded. "Got it." Jiraiya nodded to Hiruzen, then turned to Gamaken. "Gamaken, request Lord Fukasaku to reverse summon us to Mount Myaboku immediately." Hiruzen, understanding Mito's plan, immediately unsummoned Enma and reached Jiraiya, who grabbed hold of him. Gamaken disappeared in a puff of smoke. A few moments later, Jiraiya disappeared with the Hokage. "No." Orochimaru's voice tore through the air, a mix of fury and desperation. "You fools. If you unleash that power here, you'll obliterate your beloved village." Mito smiled humorlessly. "I'll have to thank your brave bodyguards for safeguarding it, then." With a thrust of her palm, she launched the tailed beast bomb towards an immobilized Orochimaru. Orochimaru realized at that instant that he had been had. The four purple flames formation was still active. "Fools, undo the barrier." "Undo." Orochimaru could not finish that sentence as the tailed beast bomb exploded in his face. Inside the barrier, the tailed beast bomb exploded with a deafening roar. An enormous explosion filled the barrier and stretched and strained its limits. As the attack reached its peak, the immense pressure and heat began to take their toll on the barrier's integrity. The inner layer of the barrier, closest to the explosion, started to vaporize under the relentless assault of the tailed beast bomb. It disintegrated, unable to withstand the concentrated energy that bombarded its structure at every moment. The destruction of the inner barrier had dire consequences for the four shinobi maintaining the two barriers. The sudden release of energy from the inner barrier's collapse overwhelmed them, their forms evaporating in a flash of scorching light. As they perished, the outer barrier, now unsupported, flickered out of existence, no longer sustained by their chakra. Although the barriers failed, they fulfilled a crucial function, they directed the majority of the blast upwards. The explosion, rather than spreading outward in all directions, funneled a significant portion of its energy skyward. A colossal pillar of fiery energy shot into the sky, piercing the clouds and dissipating into the atmosphere. This redirection spared the surrounding area from total annihilation, though the ground zero of the impact was scorched, leaving a charred crater as a testament to the bomb's power. "We're close," Naruto muttered as he, Kakashi, and Sasuke continued their pursuit of Gaara. "A couple hundred meters more." Kakashi's ninja dog that was leading them confirmed. "How did you know that?" Sasuke asked Naruto. The blonde idiot had somehow turned competent during the month-long break. It was alarming that no one seemed suspicious. Usually, such drastic changes with active shinobi would warrant observation. "I can kinda sense chakra now." Naruto lied. "Man, I gotta stop blurting these things out, at least until the old man gives me the go-ahead to let them in on the Rinnegan. That's not an ability you develop overnight. You're either born a sensor or you're not. There are techniques that shinobi can use to sense chakra even if they are not sensors," Kakashi informed Sasuke. "The only problem is that they are quite chakra intensive. However, this isn't a problem for Naruto." Internally, Kakashi wondered what the extent of Naruto's abilities were and what kind of bloodline limit he had awakened. Sasuke had the distinct feeling that his sensei and teammate were scamming him. But he had more serious things to worry about. Gaara was now within eyesight, along with his siblings and their Jounin sensei. Gaara was unrecognizable as he was surrounded completely by a mass of sand, forming a protective cocoon around him. Baki of the sand sensed the approach of the Konoha ninja and turned around immediately. "Temari, carry Gaara. Kankuro, engage the genin," he ordered. As Baki prepared to confront Kakashi, Naruto and Sasuke shifted their focus to Kankuro, the puppeteer. "Naruto, take him. I'll go after Gaara," Sasuke said, dashing off around Kankuro while throwing a few kunai with an explosive tag towards him. "Sasuke, wait," Naruto yelled, frustrated. "Bastard," he muttered as Kankuro deflected the kunai with ease. "Looks like it's you and me, kid." Kankuro smirked. Despite his confident facade, he was worried for his siblings. Sasuke would prove to be a problem if he caught up to Temari before they could reach their destination. They were asked to reach the borders of the clan grounds before releasing the Shukaku to ensure maximum damage to Konoha. "Unfortunately, I don't have time for you," Naruto said, irritated. He flipped through some hand seals. "Fire style. Great fireball jutsu," he shouted, infusing as much chakra as he could into the attack in one go. But the Kankuro let out a curse at the unexpected jutsu, quickly dodging away from the technique's path. He gulped when he saw the pure destructive power of the explosion. It was no lesser than that showcased by Sasuke, a native fire jutsu user. Before Kankuro could fully regain his footing, two of Naruto's clones coordinated a pincer attack, closing in on him from both sides. Reacting instinctively, Kankuro executed a nimble backflip, pulling a Karasu's strings to unwrap the bandages that concealed much of the puppet's body. He pulled some of the numerous hidden strings connecting to the puppet, sending bursts of chakra to signal his attack. Two of the puppet's arms extended rapidly to either side, with sharp knives glinting menacingly as they thrust toward the clone's position. However, Naruto did not seem surprised by the hidden weaponry, with one clone sidestepping the attack and the other jumping away from it. Naruto was exasperated and slightly terrified at the numerous weapons he could see inside Karasu. His Rinnegan could see the chakra-laden weapons inside the puppet and the strings controlling it. He could see the chakra traveling from Kankuro to the puppet through the strings, and he guessed its purpose correctly. Now he knew what to look out for. If he tracked which strings carried the chakra signal from Kankuro, he could guess which part of the puppet was about to attack. It also helped that each clone was getting this information from multiple points of view. Almost as soon as Karasu launched the attack against the two clones, a third clone started to prepare another attack. He fired a volley of water bullets at Kankuro, hoping to catch the puppeteer by surprise. "DCH. This is tricky," Kankuro muttered as he pulled Karasu in front of him to shield him from the attack. As he stepped back to put a little more distance between them, he realized that his legs were tangled in a viscous, sticky mire. Kankuro's eyes widened, his expression turning to one of frustration and alarm as he realized the extent of the trap laid out before him. The ground beneath his feet was no longer solid, it had transformed into a large sticky swamp. Several Naruto clones had surrounded them and cast the swamp of the underworld jutsu during the chaos of the earlier exchange. The swamp covered a significant portion of the battlefield, enveloping even the Naruto clones that were battling him so far. "Wait, so none of you are real?" Kankuro whipped his head around while struggling to get out of the swamp. He had looked down on the Hyuga's earlier attempts to escape the swamp. But it seemed it was not as easy as it looked. "Nope. Boss scooted right after that first fireball jutsu after creating a dozen of us." The clones grinned and all of them dispersed together. Kankuro was now stuck in the swamp with his puppet. The two Jonin had moved away earlier to avoid harming their genin during the fight, so he couldn't expect help from Baki anytime soon. Shit. Naruto grinned as the memories of the clones he had left behind reached him. He was crouched behind a bush, watching Sasuke face off against Temari. He didn't want to reveal his presence immediately. He had created several clones that were also watching the face-off from different positions. Temari had not resorted to any jutsu yet, as her wind style was counterproductive against Sasuke's fire style. "I advise you to step back," Sasuke said, eyeing the sand-encased Gaara behind her. "And just let you kill my brother? Not a chance." Temari countered, standing protectively over Gaara. "When your brother is a psycho who kills everyone, that's the logical thing you should do. Do you think he gives a damn whether you live or die? You would know a thing or two about psychotic brothers, right Uchiha?" Temari shot back. "That was the wrong thing to say." Sasuke's Sharingan blazed to life as he started to speed through the seals of his first attack. High release. Great fireball jutsu. Sasuke shot out a ball of flame that expanded as it crossed the distance between him and Temari. Temari swung her fan with precise timing, careful that she didn't enhance the fireball, but rather redirected upwards, causing it to explode harmlessly in the sky. Wind-style users would get massacred by fire-style users if they didn't use their understanding of wind currents to manipulate even the fiercest attacks away from them. Maybe this is why Konoha and Suna were natural allies. Wind style and fire style work great together, but wind users have a hard time defending against fire style. She really didn't know what her father was thinking, orchestrating this invasion. Even with the sound ninja, it was a ridiculous plan to go against Konoha on their own turf. They needed the one-tails to wreak havoc for their plan to stand a chance of working. "Let's increase the distance a bit." Temari launched into a series of rapid maneuvers, using her fan to generate slicing wind blades, aimed at the environment around Sasuke. Several trees and parts of the underbrush were cut down, creating obstacles that Sasuke had to dodge. "She's trying to get me away from Gaara." Sasuke observed the subtle movements of Temari's fan, allowing him to predict and avoid the targets of her attack. This was the kind of thing the Sharingan excelled at. A level of observation-backed intuition so advanced that opponents would feel the Uchiha could see the future. Forming new hand seals, Sasuke unleashed the fire style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu, sending multiple small fireballs in a widespread attack. Temari quickly realized that diverting the many fireballs would only lead them to the trees scattered around them, causing them to combust. She instead spread her fan wide and shielded herself and Gaara from the fire jutsu. Sasuke used the momentary blind spot in Temari's vision to close the distance between them. As he charged forward, Temari quickly swung her fan with all her might, generating a massive gust of wind to repel him. Sasuke, anticipating this, leaped over the direct path of the attack. He threw a couple of kunai as he passed above Temari and Gaara, landing on the other side. Whirling around, he smirked and flipped through the hand seals for his strongest jutsu. Lightning started to coalesce at the tips of his fingers as he charged up a Chidori. "I'll cut you into bits before you make it here," Temari declared, charging up her chakra to follow through on her threat. Suddenly, she felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Before she could react, a hand grabbed onto her ankle and pulled her down in one fluid motion. When did Temari cut herself off as she struggled to move? She was now buried neck-deep in the mud. She glared as the blonde brat who faced off against the Hyuga exited the bushes behind Sasuke, wearing a smug expression. "Earth style, headhunter jutsu," Naruto announced gleefully. "Brings back memories, eh, Sasuke?" He was glad he practiced this particular earth-style jutsu, as it was another surefire way of immobilizing most Genin or Chunin level opponents if they were pulled in by the jutsu. "Shut up, moron," Sasuke said, annoyed at the reminder. "Keep watch while I finish off Gaara," Sasuke said as he completed the hand seals for the Chidori. Sasuke, is that really required?" Naruto watched as the concentrated massive chakra sharpened in Sasuke's fingers. He remembered Gaara's story from Kabuto, and he had developed some empathy for someone he had earlier considered a monster. "You heard what Kakashi said." Sasuke locked his eyes with Gaara's form. "I don't enjoy it, but this is what it means to be a ninja, Naruto." He dashed towards Gaara's form, ignoring Temari's frantic cry of alarm. "Gaara! Watch out." Temari screamed at the top of her lungs, hoping her brother would hear her. "Sasuke!" Naruto shouted immediately after, noticing a change in the chakra of the sand cocoon. Before Sasuke could reach halfway, an enormous hand made out of sand exploded out of the cocoon that encased Gaara. Thanks to Naruto's warning and his Sharingan, Sasuke sidestepped the hand of sand and continued in his trajectory. However, he was forced to give up when a second hand emerged from the first one and made to grab him. Sasuke positioned himself at a safe distance from Gaara as he reassessed the situation. The hand withdrew and merged with the cocoon. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld. Naruto was starting to feel like a one-trick pony after they performed the same jutsu for the third time that day. But he had to admit, it was dead useful. Sasuke leapt back in surprise as the land surrounding Gaara turned into a miniature swamp. The cocoon quickly began sinking into it due to its weight. "That is a dangerous jutsu," Sasuke thought as he observed the swamp with his Sharingan. He could see that it was thick with chakra, constantly shifting unpredictably. He was starting to understand how Naruto had supposedly won against the Hyuga. The cocoon containing Gaara was halfway submerged when it suddenly began to rise out of the swamp. Two legs had grown from beneath it, supporting the structure and countering Naruto's technique with its own chakra. Man, this would have been a lot easier if I could just use the Rinnegan abilities, Naruto complained internally as he fired a barrage of water bullets. The shell remained unaffected, the sand absorbing the impact of the bullets. He learned two different chakra natures in a month. The suspicion Sasuke had felt earlier grew when he saw Naruto's water-style technique. It had taken years for him to be able to wield two elements. He had already knew fire manipulation and learned lightning style from Kakashi by exclusively training on it for the last month. He had the advantage of having a Sharingan and having an affinity towards lightning nature. Naruto had learned it both in a month. Even Itachi couldn't learn that fast. Look out. Naruto shouted urgently, interrupting his train of thought. Out of nowhere, a Naruto clone appeared and tackled Sasuke to the ground. Not a moment later, spike made of sand exploded out of the cocoon and attacked the place where Sasuke had stood. The attack brushed against the clone instead, dispelling it instantly. How did you predict that? Sasuke was shaken. His Sharingan had seen the attack coming, but it was too late for him to react. But Naruto was able to see and respond to it. Even worse, the clone that was hiding behind him had also seen it, evidenced by the fact that it moved to push him away before Naruto's warning. No time to explain now, we'll talk later. Sasuke's eyes widened as he saw Naruto flipping through a familiar set of hand signs. There's no way, he thought in disbelief. But this was not the time to think. Unconsciously, Sasuke mirrored Naruto's move, although he was questioning his own sanity at this point. Higher style. Great fireball jutsu. Both Naruto and Sasuke shouted, releasing their techniques together. The two fireballs converged and collided with Gaara's sand, resulting in a spectacular blast of fire. That's one tough defense, Naruto grimaced, as the fire died down to reveal that Gaara's sand cocoon had withstood the combined attack. However, Sasuke could see that patches of the cocoon had turned glassy from the heat of the strike. It shouldn't be very comfortable inside. Sasuke thought with a smirk. True to his prediction, the front part of the cocoon broke off, revealing a very pissed off Gaara. The right half of his face was covered by sand, with the right eye glinting yellow over a black pupil. You've only succeeded in angering me, Gaara's voice emerged, distorted and menacing. The sand around him began to shift, reflecting his unstable emotions. He raised his hand, and the sand reacted instantly as it gathered densely around him, ready to strike. Well, let me anger you some more. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto promptly formed a dozen clones who immediately scattered while flipping through hand signs. Uzumaki style. Water Bullet Infinite Barrage. They shouted, performing the Water Bullet Jutsu in unison. This was his own semi-original jutsu combination that he had come up with during the battle against Neji. High-pressure water bullets launched from the mouths of each clone, converging towards Gaara's position. Gaara swept his hand in a wide arc and commanded the sand around him to intercept the attack. He created a thick spinning barrier, somewhat similar to Neji's rotation, to stop the bullets. Unlike Neji, he could keep this up for a long time due to his chakra reserves. The sand absorbed the impact of the water, but the continuous barrage began to saturate it, making the sand heavier and slightly slower to respond. Gaara's brow furrowed in annoyance, his control starting to slip due to the heaviness of the sand. Patches of the sand began to clump and drip, showing signs of strain. Gaara gritted his teeth. Enough of this. He exclaimed and thrust his hand forward. Sand coffin. Suddenly, the sand shielding him exploded outward in the form of many hands, aiming at the clones surrounding him. As the sand enveloped each clone, they were compressed with crushing force, dispelling them. Ouch, that's brutal. Naruto grimaced, feeling echoes of the clone's destruction. He nimbly dodged as one of the sandy hands lunged for him, his smirk betraying his satisfaction with the distraction he'd created. Gaara focused all the sand arms on pursuing what he thought was the last target, the original Naruto. This is the end. He declared. It was at that moment that a voice came from behind him, the air crackling with the sharp sound of chirping. For you, it said. Gaara spun around, only to cry out in agony as a surge of piercing pain overwhelmed him. Naruto let out a relieved sigh when he saw that Sasuke's sneak attack was successful. As Gaara got busy keeping track of the many clones that were attacking him, Sasuke disappeared in the confusion. Naruto guessed what he was up to, so he kept up the momentum of his attacks and forced Gaara to move his sand away from him. He has a layer of sand sticking to his body. The attack didn't do as much damage as I hoped. Sasuke grimaced, landing next to Naruto. What's he up to? Naruto asked suddenly, narrowing his eyes. Alarmed, Sasuke focused his Sharingan on Gaara, who had clasped his hands together as if in prayer. You will know the terror, he wheezed, grinding his teeth in pain, the terror of angering the sand. Playing possum jutsu. At that moment, Naruto sensed that something has gone very, very wrong. Sasuke, get back. He screamed, pulling his teammate with him as he kicked on the ground to dart backward. What the hell, Naruto? Sasuke exclaimed, his eyes still locked on Gaara. But he followed Naruto's lead, allowing Naruto to pull him back as a dreadful, eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Barely a moment later, the sand around Gaara began to churn violently. More and more sand began to rise up from the ground and joined the newly formed sandstorm, its size increasing by the second. Within moments, the sandstorm grew and dwarfed the trees, easily reaching 100 meters in height. As the storm's rage reached its peak, it abruptly collapsed inward. Sasuke and Naruto watched, tense and alert. After a moment, the sand shifted subtly, then began to bulge and crack, as if something within was struggling to break free. Suddenly, the mound exploded outward, and from its core, a monstrous form began to emerge. Two enormous claws broke through first, followed by an equally large animalistic head. As it stepped out of the mound, the shape of the beast vaguely resembled a tanuki. An enormous tail swished behind it, leveling numerous trees with every movement. The Anbu guarding the perimeter of the four violet flames formation had been closely monitoring the unfolding battle. When the preparations for a tailed beast bomb began, they immediately sprung into action, evacuating the area. Memories of the devastation wrought by such an attack 13 years prior, although redirected away from the village, were still vividly etched in their minds. Despite the protective barrier, they preferred to err on the side of caution. As the explosion subsided, the Anbu gathered around the scorched remains of the battlefield. Their initial task was to search for any trace of Orochimaru or his underlings, but it appeared that they had all been vaporized by the attack. However, their attention quickly shifted as they noticed a strange disturbance at the site where Lady Mito had previously stood. Through the thinning smoke, a figure slowly began to materialize. It was Mito Uzumaki, reconstructing herself from the ashes of the blast, her form regaining substance through the regeneration provided by the reanimation. The Anbu units instinctively assumed a defensive stance as Mito materialized. She snapped, her tone laced with irritation, "Use your brains. I am not your enemy." One of the Anbu members cautiously replied, respect coloring his voice, "Forgive us, Lady Mito. In the absence of the Hokage, we must be prepared for all possibilities." His tone was filled with a mixture of reverence and disbelief. It was not every day one found oneself speaking to a legend. He had been just a boy when the news of her passing swept through Konoha, a day of mourning that gripped the village as intensely as the death of a sitting Hokage. Mito rolled her eyes. They should be back shortly. In the meantime, it may be more conducive to deal with those. She pointed eastwards, where the village gates were beset with enormous snakes. "Might we inquire what you plan on doing, Lady Mito?" another Anbu asked. Mito sighed, a hint of resignation in her voice. "Now that I've released the reanimation, I'm bound to this world for a while. I need to find my way back." She paused, then pointed westward. "I sense the chakra of a tailed beast in that direction, the one tail, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to suppress it. One of you can come along if you'd like to keep an eye on me until the Hokage returns." The Anbu exchanged quick, uncertain glances, their immediate concern about the tailed beast overshadowing their initial suspicions of the reanimated shinobi. After a moment of deliberation, the Anbu with a dragon mask spoke decisively, "Cat, accompany her. The rest of us will handle any rogue elements remaining." As Mito set off in the direction of the One-Tail's chakra, the female Anbu known as Cat quickly fell in step beside her. As they moved, Mito broke the silence with a question. "Tell me, is there a Jinchuriki for the Nine Tails currently?" "Yes, your ladyship. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, although I am not certain if he is a member of your clan or not." Cat responded. I see. Mito sensed the chakra that was close to the chakra of the One-Tails. It was definitely that of an Uzumaki. It reminded her of Kushina. She knew he was a Jinchuriki from his chakra, but she had not been sure if it was known by the Anbu. "What happened to Kushina Uzumaki?" "She had reached Konoha shortly before my death." Mito asked, unable to contain her curiosity. She regretted the fact that she did not spend enough time with her brother's granddaughter. She had only met the child a few days before the transfer of the Nine Tails. "I believe a Kunoichi with that died during the Nine Tails attack on the village 13 years ago." The Anbu seemed to be connecting the dots. "Was she the Jinchuriki after you, Lady Mito?" "Yes." Mito replied, sorrow filling her heart when she heard about the demise of Kushina. "What about Tsunade? My granddaughter?" she asked, afraid of the answer. "Lady Tsunade is still alive," Kat said hurriedly. "But she has secured an early retirement on express orders of the third Hokage. We don't know about the details." Mito was shocked again. What had happened to Tsuna? And why was she not looking after Naruto if he was indeed Kushina's child? Kushina was her second cousin, after all. "Let us hurry," Mito said, breaking out of her thoughts when she felt the chakra of the one-tailed spike. "I'm finally free." Shukaku, the one-tailed beast, let out a raucous gleeful shout that reverberated through the air. The beast's voice was wild and erratic, its tone oscillating between jubilation and sheer rage. "No more chains. No more cage. I'm the king of sand, baby." Naruto Sasuke said, fear beginning to show in his voice. "I don't know how to deal with this. I'm out of ideas." Yeah, that's a little above our pay grade. Naruto gulped and began to perform the hand seals he was more than intimately familiar with from the major chunk of his training last month. Come on, give me a big one, no tails, no tails, he prayed fervently. What are you doing? Do you even have a summon? Sasuke asked, recognizing the set of seals to be the same that Kakashi had used earlier. Ninja art. Summoning. Naruto flooded his chakra into his hands, performing the summoning jutsu for the first time since he gained his Rinnegan. The puff of smoke signified that the jutsu was a success. However, Naruto's eye twitched at the size of his summon. Yo. A small red toad appeared, raising his hands in a salute. He looked at the boy who had summoned him. You're not Jiraiya. Are you the new summoner who has been kidnapping the Toad Clan's babies? Naruto flushed red, embarrassed. I didn't want your babies, damn it. Why are you here? Don't you have anyone big? Like the ones the pervy sage summons. Rude, the toad folded his arms, annoyed. That's no way to speak to your superiors, young man. And how can you get big toads if all you use is a teeny bit of chakra, huh? Superiors? Superiors, Naruto spluttered. You're supposed to do as I tell you. Huh, why would we do that? The small toad was thoroughly enjoying educating the new summoner. He understood why his dad found it so fun. We're doing you a favor by being here, kid. If you want us to do something for you, you better make sure you stay on our good side. Naruto, Sasuke hissed. What? Naruto snapped, looking at Sasuke. Sasuke simply pointed above him. Naruto followed his gaze and found two large malevolent eyes staring at him. Oh, hey, isn't that Shukaku the one-tail? I've heard he's a crackpot with a few screws loose. The little toad said, facing the beast that could snort it through its nostril. Fortunately, it didn't seem like the massive beast hurt him. Ever heard of something called self-preservation? Naruto asked, starting to sweat at Shukaku's intense gaze. Hey, what are you so scared about? My old man could take him. Probably. Well, you're not him, and he's not here. Sasuke finally joined the conversation. I suggest you run and get him if you don't want to get squished. Sasuke's words hung in the air as they all tensed, sensing the impending threat. Just then, Shukaku's thunderous voice shattered the brief silence. So what's up, party people? Shukaku boomed, and Naruto could feel the sound waves from his voice literally hitting them. Is that tiny froggy going to face me? Ha 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 ha. Boy, I'm a toad, you moron. Don't you have eyes? Sasuke's hands abruptly closed around the toad's mouth as he smiled nervously at the beast. He didn't mean it. He said weakly. Beside him, he could feel Naruto building up his chakra. At this point, he didn't care that Naruto had somehow surpassed him in a month with the sheer number of jutsu he learned. He could catch up easily with his Sharingan. He just prayed that the next summon was more useful. Ninja art. Summoning. Naruto exclaimed. This time, he gathered and infused a far greater amount of chakra into his hand seals than before. He tapped into the deep reservoirs of chakra that his jutsu training had unlocked. Although his chakra pool was immense, he could only channel so much at a given time. It was quite a hassle to grab hold of and control that much chakra at once, but he had to make it work somehow. This was the main problem he faced with the swamp of the underworld technique. He simply wasn't used to gathering as much chakra as was needed to perform the jutsu in one go. Hence the reason why he relied on his clones to complete that technique. The ground beneath Naruto trembled slightly as he slammed his palm onto the earth, channeling his intent and chakra into the summoning formula. A much larger cloud of smoke enveloped the area where they were standing. Naruto and Sasuke felt the ground beneath them shift and rise. The sensation was akin to the sudden lurch of the earth during a quake, and Naruto channeled chakra to his feet to keep himself stabilized. Finally, Naruto exclaimed as he saw the large toad that he had summoned. It was a green toad that was half the size of the one tail, but at least now they stood a chance. Oh, hey there, Uncle Gamahiro. The small toad that Naruto had summoned earlier slipped from Sasuke's grasp and landed on the new toad's head. Amakichi. Where have you been? The boss is searching for you. The now identified Gamahiro glanced up in an attempt to see the tiny toad sitting on his head. Hey, this dopey-looking kid summoned me. He replied, pointing to Naruto. He then whispered conspiratorially. He's the baby kidnapper. For the last time, Naruto bellowed. I didn't do it on purpose. The conversation was cut off by a loud, resounding laugh. This one's a runt too. Shukaku cackled loudly, his booming voice laced with mockery and derision. A runt summoning other runts. Nice trick, but I'm bored now. His expression abruptly shifted. Let's see some blood. He said in a half-crazed voice and thrust his palm downward, intending to flatten the large toad with the sheer force of his strike. Move. Naruto shouted with urgency. Thankfully, the larger toad complied, jumping back just in time to escape the might of the attack. The palm hit the area they were previously occupying. The ground exploded under the force of Shukaku's massive palm strike. Dust and debris flew into the air as a crater formed, the edges crumbling as the earth settled after the abrupt disturbance. Trees surrounding the impact zone snapped or were uprooted, creating a small clearing in the forest. The shockwaves sent vibrations through the ground, rattling the area surrounding them and causing smaller creatures to scurry away in panic. Naruto and Sasuke, now safely on Gamahiro's back, watched with wide eyes as the dust began to settle. "That was close," Naruto muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Thanks Gamahiro," he shouted over the ringing in his ears from the impact. "Don't mention it," Gamahiro replied, his voice deep and resonant. He shifted his massive body, readying himself for another potential strike. "But that thing, Shukaku, it's not something I can handle. We'll need the boss for this one." Yeah, that might be a problem." Naruto gulped. "I can't mold that much chakra in one go yet. You're the biggest summon I've gotten so far. You'll need to triple that chakra to get the boss." Gamahiro winced. "I'll try to hold on till reinforcements arrive." Shukaku watched the exchange with a crazed grin. He was already gathering more sand around his fist as he prepared for another attack. His eyes gleamed with the thrill of destruction. "We need to keep him busy or he's going to flatten everything in sight," Sasuke said, looking around for any advantage they could use. "Naruto, can your clones distract him long enough for us to think of a plan?" "Leave it to me," Naruto exclaimed, already forming the seals for the shadow clone jutsu. In an instant, a few dozen clones Naruto's appeared and immediately dispersed in various directions. The monstrous Tanuki followed the clone's movements with his eyes, chuckling darkly. "More targets, more fun," he roared, swinging his sand-coated fists at the nearest clones. To their credit, many of the clones moved out of the way, but a few were inevitably crushed. "Can you summon another toad like him?" Sasuke asked, hating the fact that he would have to rely more on Naruto for this fight. But seeing the light of another day took precedence over everything else now. "I need a few more minutes, at least." Naruto grimaced. "My chakra coils are burning just from this summon." "Well then, here goes nothing." Sasuke turned to Shukaku, funneling as much chakra into his Sharingan as he did so. He held up his hands in a peculiar hand sign. Naruto could see a surge of yin nature chakra and realized what Sasuke was trying to do. "Ninjutsu? Will that even work on that thing?" Naruto asked disbelievingly. "Are you really the same Naruto from a month ago?" Sasuke muttered, shaking his head at the accuracy of Naruto's deduction. "If it wasn't for Kakashi-sensei vouching for you, I'd have been sure you were being impersonated." Yeah, a lot of things happened." Naruto rubbed his head nervously. A moment later, Shukaku paused his mindless thrashing and slowly turned towards Naruto and Sasuke. And Uchiha Shukaku's tone changed from the earlier playful mood. His voice now hid quiet wrath. "I was looking forward to getting your blood through Gaara, but I'll have to do it myself, I suppose," he said, slowly advancing on the duo. "Kids, I think he's getting serious now," Gamahiro said, bracing himself as the tailed beast advanced to their position. "Yeah, no shit." Naruto gulped. "I guess it didn't work, Sasuke." "Useless." Sasuke cursed. "This is a lot harder than affecting a human." "I'll have to do my best, then," Gamahiro proclaimed, drawing his twin swords from their scabbards. "Hold on tight, as if your life depends on it." "Hell yeah, let's go." Naruto cheered, glad that the toad was finally going to fight. "Toad sword style. Dance of blades." Gamahiro proclaimed, blasting toward Shukaku with astonishing speed that belied his enormous eyes. He swung his sword in a wide arc as he reached Shukaku. The Tanuki immediately raised his arms defensively. Although the first attack was blocked, Gamahiro relentlessly swung his swords, creating a rhythmic pattern of cuts and slices that gradually chipped away at Shukaku's sandy armor. Each strike of the blade sent a cascade of sand particles flying, revealing the sheer force behind Gamahiro's attacks. Shukaku, growing increasingly irritated by the persistent assault, retaliated with a fierce growl. "Is that all you've got, overgrown tadpole?" he taunted, summoning his power to manipulate the sand around him. He attempted a counter-strike, sending waves of sand swirling towards Gamahiro, aiming to entangle and immobilize him. Gamahiro, however, anticipated this move. With a deft leap, he avoided the encroaching sand trap and launched himself back into the fray. "Not even close." He barked back, readying his next technique. Toad sword style. Crescent moon barrage. This time, he executed a series of rapid, precise strikes, each one aimed at different angles to confuse and outmaneuver Shukaku's defenses. The crescent-shaped blades of wind that accompanied each slash tore through the air, slicing through the dense sand barriers conjured by Shukaku. The Tanuki grunted as several hits landed, causing him to stagger slightly under the impact. "That's it," the Tanuki growled, rapidly losing patience. "Time to get serious. Say goodbye to your village, chumps." His entire body glowed, and chakra started to gather in front of him into a small point. Naruto felt the hairs on the back stand up as he observed that attack. A flood of powerful chakra flowed from Shukaku's body, swirling into a tiny sphere. Through his Rinnegan, Naruto could see the intricate layers of chakra condensing into a single almost blindingly bright point. The sphere pulsed, its surface crackling with raw, untamed energy that sent ripples through the air. Naruto could see the ground beneath it began to crack, unable to withstand the pressure of the gathering energy. Naruto's heart raced as he realized the scale of destruction this attack could unleash. "This is bad," he muttered under his breath, feeling a sense of impending doom. He could almost feel the chakra's thirst for destruction, as if it were alive and eager to devour everything in its path. "We need to stop that, now." Naruto shouted to Sasuke and Gamahiro, pointing at the menacing sphere. "Whatever that is, it's going to be massive. I'll be honest. Our best course of action is to retreat," Gamahiro said, his voice shaking. "Even if we attack, the only thing that's gonna change is that we'll all die faster than the others. If we run, we might survive." "Yeah, unfortunately that's not an option. You wouldn't be a Leaf Shinobi if it were," Gamahiro replied, a hint of pride in his voice. "So what do you suggest we do?" Naruto, who had been trying to gather chakra for the past few minutes to try and summon the Toad Boss, was suddenly struck with inspiration. "Please, trust me and do as I say." "Whenever I hear that," Gamahiro said wryly, "I know that the plan will be stupid or reckless." "What is it?" "Get me as close to that ball as you can." Gamahiro sighed, a deep rumble echoing from his throat as he eyed the growing chakra sphere warily. "You know, that sounds suspiciously like a suicide mission. You sure you're not mixing up bravery with madness?" Naruto Sasuke searched his teammate's eyes, but could only see a steely resolve. "You can jump down if you're scared, Sasuke." Sasuke snorted. "As if. Someone needs to carry your corpse back. If anything remains at all." "Well, it was a cushy life," Gamakichi clutched onto Gamahiro. "Give me a good show, kid. I'll be sure to recommend you to Pops if we survive this." "Thanks." Naruto grinned, touched by the vote of confidence. "Now." Gamahiro steeled his resolve and leaped towards the One-Tails. As his form rocketed towards the charging tailed beast bomb, he began to feel the intense heat rolling off from the attack. "It's all on you now, kid." As they reached less than a dozen meters away, Naruto extended his right palm skyward, directing it towards Shukaku's face. "Shinra Tensei." The incomplete tailed beast bomb wavered for a moment before it blasted backwards onto the open jaws of a startled Shukaku. The attack exploded, illuminating the area with a fierce fiery glow. The explosion rocked the immediate vicinity, sending shockwaves rippling through the air and ground. Although the force of the blast was immense, the strategic positioning of Naruto's push directed the majority of the destructive energy back toward Shukaku, sparing the surrounding landscape from severe damage. The enraged tailed beast, engulfed in the explosion he had intended for his foes, clutched his head in pain. A roar of pain and rage echoed through the forest. A good portion of its head was missing, but the beast was somehow still standing. Naruto was breathing heavily from sheer exertion as Sasuke watched him with disbelief. He managed a weary smile. "Looks like we bought ourselves some time," he said, watching Shukaku stagger. In the face of certain death, he didn't have a choice but to reveal his technique. Sasuke watched Naruto's jutsu through his Sharingan, his eyes tracing the patterns of the chakra flow as Naruto executed the jutsu. It was unlike anything he had seen before. His Sharingan couldn't decipher the mechanics or classify the jutsu. It was somewhat similar to what he had felt when he watched Haku's eye style way back when he first awakened his Sharingan. Just as Haku's eye style was not one of the standard chakra natures, was the technique Naruto demonstrated a different change of nature. It was not an elemental ninjutsu, although he could find a mild similarity with the earth style. "What was that?" Sasuke exclaimed, his tone filled with surprise and disbelief. "That's a new bloodline limit I've awakened," Naruto admitted. "The old man Hokage told me not to share any details unless he's cleared it." Sasuke's brows furrowed. That made sense, at least. But it still left some questions unanswered. "Is it a Dojutsu?" "A what?" Naruto asked, puzzled. "An eye-related bloodline." What makes you think that?" Naruto stuttered. How had Sasuke realized that so fast? "You knew when Shukaku was going to attack before me, and I have a Sharingan," Sasuke pointed out sharply. Naruto's reaction told him all that he needed to know. "Earlier, you also sensed how close we were to Gaara." "I can't really tell you now, anyone could hear us," Naruto cringed. Although he would eventually have to share his abilities with his teammates, just as Sasuke had briefed them on his Sharingan, he couldn't do so without the Hokage's consent. Sasuke nodded, understanding the need for secrecy when it came to bloodline limits. But he was curious. He had never heard of a Dojutsu that exceeded the Sharingan in predictive capability. "You little brat." Shukaku's scream of fury cut through their conversation, rattling the leaves around them and jolting them back to the immediate danger. The massive beast had recovered more quickly than they expected, and his rage was palpable. "You think you can play with the big boys? Let's see how you handle this." Shukaku raised his tail, and Naruto could see a torrent of wind-nature chakra being exuded from it. Naruto, Sasuke, and the summoned toads watched in horror as numerous blades of wind started to form and circle around the tail, spinning at high speed and causing an ominous high-pitched whistling sound. I'll shred you all to bits. Ha 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 ha. The beast exclaimed in manic joy. As Shukaku's laughter echoed through the battlefield, celebrating the impending destruction of his enemies, a sudden flash of gold cut through the air. Without warning, an array of glowing golden chains burst from the ground around him. They wrapped around Shukaku's tail and body, restraining him forcefully. The wind blades dissipated under the sudden assault as the chains tightened, pulling the massive tanuki's form towards the ground. The creature struggled to break free of the chains, its cackles turning into curses of frustration and pain. More and more chains emerged, each one binding him more securely. A few of them wrapped around his mouth, muting his cries of rage. The figure stepped forward from the edge of the clearing. Naruto could see that she was a woman, but there was something inherently wrong with her. The world around her seemed to take on a different hue, as if everything, including light, was distorting around her. He noticed a faint, ethereal outline that seemed to hover around her body. This outline pulsed with a pale, ghostly light and appeared as a secondary echo or shadow that mirrored her movements. What caught his attention most, though, was the network of what appeared to be glowing white threads that seemed to have sewed the outline with the body. He could see quite clearly that she had no heartbeat and her chakra itself seemed odd. With a jolt, Naruto realized that he was witnessing the result of the impure world reincarnation technique that Orochimaru had used earlier. "Who are you?" Sasuke demanded, his Sharingan also revealing something slightly abnormal about her. Mito Uzumaki smiled, her face softening as she saw a boy who was unmistakably Kushina's child, standing next to an Uchiha boy. "I am Mito Uzumaki," she said, observing Naruto with a hint of melancholy. "I am a shinobi of the leaf who had passed from this world decades ago, but an unnatural jutsu brought me back to the world of the living. I have broken free from the controls of that technique and came here to assist with subduing Shukaku." "The jutsu brought you back to life." Sasuke's breath hitched. "That's impossible." "Improbable." Mito corrected. "There is nothing impossible in this world. However, a life has to be given in exchange for another life, and such an exchange always has grave consequences. And I am not truly alive, as my soul is merely forced to occupy this earthly vessel by the bindings of this jutsu." The cat-masked Anbu also arrived next to her, slightly out of breath. "Ah, you've taken care of the tailed beast, Lady Mito. He has been subdued." She nodded and turned her gaze back to Naruto. "Are we related?" Naruto asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "I believe so, yes." Mito nodded. "However, it is best if we discuss this a little later, Naruto." She smiled. "We have to take care of Shukaku first and stop the invasion." Naruto nodded, quickly rubbing his eyes under the guise of clearing dust, although it was more to disguise the tears that had begun to form. Sasuke observed carefully, less suspicious now that an Anbu had arrived to vouch for her. He vaguely remembered the name Uzumaki Mito, but couldn't place it. He was sure it was at least mentioned once in their history books. Mito turned her attention to Shukaku, who was visibly protesting his capture. She felt a pang of regret, but she couldn't let such a beast roam about uncontrolled. In a flash, she moved to stand next to it. "Suppression seal." She muttered and placed her hands on Shukaku's body. A moment later, Naruto observed that the chakra of Shukaku was rapidly flowing back inside Gaara. Shukaku's form shrunk, diminishing until it was fully absorbed by Gaara. When Mito's chains disappeared a moment later, all that could be seen was the bleeding and unconscious form of Gaara. As the Anbu agent stepped forward, Naruto realized the danger. "Please don't kill him," he exclaimed with urgency. The Anbu glanced at Naruto. "I wasn't planning to. If a target is neutralized, the standard procedure is to hand them over to the torture and interrogation unit where they will be held. The Hokage will decide what is to be done with him." She didn't owe Naruto an explanation, but the boy had demonstrated significant courage and potential by holding off the tailed beast until they arrived. Humming from a genin, that deserved a minimum courtesy from her, at least. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and turned back to Mito. "What about the other reanimated Hokage? How is the old man and pervy sage?" he asked, unleashing all his pent-up questions. Mito blinked. "You are quite well informed," she said, surprised. Naruto cringed and bit his tongue at the inadvertent slip-up. I was attacked by an Anbu posing as a double agent. Kakashi-sensei got some intel out of him." Sasuke didn't show any reaction to Naruto's bald-faced lie, but he questioned how Naruto had come to know such detailed information. If Kakashi had interrogated the Anbu, why would he share the information with Naruto? Mito nodded, seemingly accepting the explanation. "The reanimated Hokage have left for the pure world after I wrested control of the technique from Orochimaru. Orochimaru must be on the way to join them since he died at my hands shortly after. Hiruzen and Jiraiya are safe." Naruto was skeptical when he heard that Orochimaru was dead, given the intel he had from Kabuto. But he decided to bring it up later. "That's good." He sighed in relief. "Naruto." "Sasuke." It was at that moment that Kakashi arrived, out of breath. He froze when he saw Lady Mito, realizing who she was when the clone escorting Sakura dispelled after completing their mission. Baki had escaped as soon as he saw that Shukaku was free, and Kakashi didn't pursue him as he was more concerned with protecting his students. "She's an ally, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto assured him. "She said the snake freak isn't controlling him anymore." "I see." Kakashi observed the reanimated shinobi with his Sharingan. He was still on his guard but relaxed when Kat nodded, confirming Naruto's claim. Mito turned to Naruto. "You are a toad summoner too, I see. Could one of your toads reverse summon Jiraiya and Hiruzen? They would be in Mount Mayaboku now, as circumstances warranted they had to be evacuated from the battlefield swiftly." "I'll do that," Gamahiro nodded, still processing the ridiculous chain of events that followed Naruto's suicidal plan. He couldn't believe he was still in one piece. "Gamakichi, you go back first and inform Lord Jiraiya to be ready with Lord Third." "Got it." Gamakichi gave a salute and disappeared after a wave of goodbye to Naruto. "The toads can summon humans?" Naruto asked incredulously. Mito smiled. "All such contracts go both ways, Naruto. Reverse summoning is a derivative jutsu of the original summoning technique. If the summon is capable of performing ninjutsu, they would be able to call their summoner at times of need. The humans are also obliged to protect their summons at times of need." As they talked, Gamahiro flipped through the hand signs of the reverse summoning technique and slapped his palm on the ground. A brief cloud of smoke erupted around his palm and two figures materialized within it. Jiraiya and Hiruzen appeared, slightly disoriented but otherwise unharmed. Jiraiya quickly regained his bearings and looked around, assessing the situation. "That was a quick trip back," he commented with a wry grin. Hiruzen, on the other hand, scanned the area more seriously, his eyes settling on Mito with relief. "Lady Mito, could you please update us on the situation?" Hiruzen asked. "I believe Orochimaru is dead, along with his bodyguards. The One Tails has been contained, in no small part due to the efforts of these genin." She smiled, indicating Naruto and Sasuke. "Naruto, Sasuke, I'm glad you're safe," Hiruzen said, relieved. He turned to Kakashi. "Status report." Kakashi stood in attention. "The hospital and academy have been evacuated to safety. Some of Orochimaru's snakes are still wreaking havoc. We have moved to phase 3. Hiruzen nodded. The counterattack had begun. He glanced at Gaara and Temari, who were bound by the Anbu, and came to a decision. He flipped through a few hand signs and faced the sky. "Ninja of the sand and the sound. I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konoha. The man you believed to be your Kazekage was none other than Orochimaru, who is no more. Shukaku the sand spirit has been defeated and the Kazekage's children are now in our custody. I advise you to consider your position wisely and lay down your weapons for an unconditional surrender." Naruto was awestruck as the third Hokage's voice issued from the sky, amplified and broadcasted over the entire village. He could see a string of chakra from the Hokage connecting to an enormous dome that seemed to cover the entire village. When he first saw the dome after awakening the Rinnegan, Jiraiya was surprised that he could see it and informed him that it was the village's barrier. This jutsu seemed to connect to the barrier and use it to convey the Hokage's message. Mito closed her eyes as she sensed the changes in the village following the third's proclamation. The sand shinobi seemed to be hesitating or regrouping. They probably saw that the Shukaku had disappeared and know that they were fighting a losing battle. "I am not sure who the sound shinobi are, since they don't have distinct elemental natures, but I do sense quite a few chakra signatures scrambling to escape the village. It seems Orochimaru led his followers through fear alone." "Nothing new there." Jiraiya snorted. "Jiraiya, see to the summoned snakes. Kakashi and Kat, take the prisoners and accompany me to the command center," Hiruzen directed, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. "Lady Mito, would you escort Naruto and Sasuke to the fourth safe house? They can assist in its defense alongside the station Chunin." Mito nodded in acknowledgement before addressing the young ninjas. "Naruto, Sasuke, come with me, please." Naruto was still worried about Danzo and Root, but he hadn't voiced his concerns to Kakashi. From Kabuto's intel, it seemed like Danzo would sit back and watch the show that was the destruction of the Hidden Leaf. But you never know what he might be up to, given that the third survived. "Hey, Gigi, you think that old one-eyed guy who hangs around your office is doing okay? One of my clones saw him sneaking off to water his plants like there's no big battle happening. Could you have someone check on him, maybe?" Naruto asked, turning to Hiruzen just as they were about to leave with Mito. To their credit, none of the shinobi gave any visible reaction to his comment. Sasuke rolled his eyes at Naruto's seemingly trivial concern. Hiruzen met Naruto's gaze, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "I'll check on him, Naruto. I promise." Naruto nodded, looking relieved, and followed after Mito and Sasuke. The fourth safe house was situated deep within the Hokage monument. A secret entrance at the base of the monument led to a labyrinth of rooms and corridors chiseled out of stone. As Naruto, Sasuke, and Mito approached the entrance, a brief message crackled over the radio of an Anbu stationed outside, alerting those within of their arrival. Inside, Anko Mitarashi waited, pacing back and forth. The news of the imminent arrival of a reanimated shinobi accompanying two genin, two strategically important genin, she might add, had reached her ears just moments ago. The brief description of the technique Orochimaru had used to reanimate the past Hokages and the wife of the first had shocked her. She knew that Orochimaru reveled in learning forbidden jutsu and performing sick experiments. But she did not realize that even reviving the dead was possible with such techniques. She wondered how far he had reached in his pursuit for immortality if he could perform such a horrifying jutsu. Her thoughts shifted to the shinobi that was supposedly accompanying the genin. Mito Uzumaki was a name she vaguely recalled from her history lessons, but everyone knew of her husband, the godlike existence known as the first Hokage. She wondered what kind of a kunoichi his wife was and if the Uzumaki clan from the legends truly lived up to the tall tales. She had been amused by Naruto Uzumaki's performance in the first two stages of the exam. However, rumors of his performance in the finals and his recent tussle with a tailed beast had shaken her dismissive opinion of the brat. As the door slid open, Anko straightened, her usual smirk faltering slightly under the weight of the moment. The Uzumaki boy bounded in first, his usual energetic self, followed by a more cautious Uchiha. Behind them entered someone she presumed to be Mito Uzumaki. "Welcome to the fourth safe house," Anko greeted, her voice firm yet carrying a hint of reverence. "I'm Anko Mitarashi, special jounin in charge of this safe house. It's an honor, Lady Mito. Thank you for taking the Anbu advice to travel here under a transformation jutsu." She could no hint that told her that she was a reanimated shinobi. Lady Mito had chosen to disguise herself as a young kunoichi with distinctive red hair. Naruto furrowed his brow, confused. "Transformation jutsu? What transformation jutsu? I don't see any." Sasuke's lip twitched in amusement, finding confirmation for his Dojutsu theory. Most Dojutsu could see through simple illusions easily. His Sharingan showed him that the woman was under a henge when she arrived to confine the tailed beast. It showed her disguised form overlaid with the true form. He wondered what Naruto saw. Did he only see the true form? "This isn't my real appearance, Naruto. I used a transformation jutsu to blend in when I came from the stadium." Mito smiled, thinking Naruto had mistaken her for the nondescript red-haired woman, a younger version of herself she had modeled her disguise after. Naruto nodded slowly, squinting his eyes in a cute attempt to see through the transformation jutsu. His face cleared, his brows arching slightly as he nodded. Mito nodded to Anko, who was similarly amused by the blonde's antics. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Has the Hokage indicated any task for me now that I have escorted them here?" Anko shook her head. "The Hokage has informed us that you may stay here for now and he would only bother you if there is a pressing issue that needs your attention. He doesn't want the news of your resurrection to spread." "Of course," Mito replied understandingly. Anko turned her attention to the genin. "Find Chunin Iruka Yamino inside. He's coordinating the defense preparations in the unlikely event that this base is attacked. Your teammate is also being treated here." "Sakura," Naruto said, concern evident in his tone. "She's here. How is she doing?" "She's woken up, just a bit of shock. You can go and have a look." "Thanks, lady," Naruto nodded quickly and he said as he hurried inside. Sasuke and Mito followed him at a more measured pace. They passed through a narrow tunnel, which ended in a wide room. A few Chunin looked up as they entered, but quickly resumed their work. "Naruto." "Sasuke." A familiar voice called. Naruto sported a wide grin as he turned to the owner of the voice. "Iruka-sensei. Glad you're in one piece. I should be telling you that, you brat." Iruka shook his head, both proud and exasperated. "I heard you two helped contain the tailed beast?" he asked incredulously. "Mainly Naruto," Sasuke muttered, his wounded pride surfacing a little. He needed some time to process the day's events. He had faced 3 different opponents. He had left Kankuro to Naruto and pursued after Temari. Naruto had defeated Kankuro handily and helped end the fight with Temari with a well-timed sneak attack. He couldn't do anything against Gaara once he transformed. If it wasn't for the life or death situation, he would have been furious that Naruto didn't trust him to deal with Temari at least. But strategically, he couldn't fault Naruto for acting. "We kicked the One-Tail's ass," Naruto declared, grinning. "And you must be the member of the Sealing Corps that helped suppress it." "I don't think I know your name," Miss Iruka asked the woman trailing behind them. For some reason, Naruto snickered while Sasuke suppressed a smirk. "Call me Tomi," Mito said, bowing. Iruka hurriedly imitated her, flustered at his lack of respect for the powerful shinobi who probably outranked him. "If you wouldn't mind, could you help have a look at the barrier seals of this safe house? We haven't used it in a while, and the last inspection was a few months ago, so, of course." Mito nodded, eager to settle into something familiar in this changed world. "So, Iruka-sensei, where's Sakura? How's she doing?" Naruto interrupted. He made a mental note to ask Mito about sealing jutsu since Uzumaki were supposed to be very good at it, according to Kabuto. Iruka frowned. "She's fine physically, as the medics have healed her, but the surprise attack came as quite a shock. You can go see her in the third room to the left. He pointed to another corridor at the end of the room. As Mito followed Iruka to inspect the barrier seals, Naruto and Sasuke made their way toward Sakura's room. Hey. Sakura. Naruto burst into the room, his voice echoing with a mix of concern and relief. He stopped abruptly at the threshold, taking in Sakura's appearance. She was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. Sakura turned her head at the sound of her name, a small smile forming as she saw her teammates. Sasuke, Naruto, she greeted, her voice weak but filled with warmth. How are you feeling? Naruto asked, his tone softer than usual. A lot better, thanks to the medics here, Sakura replied, trying to reassure him. I was just startled by the attack, that's all. Guess Kakashi-sensei saved me, huh? Sasuke watched Naruto's hesitant nod and wondered what part Naruto played in capturing the Anbu operative. It seemed ridiculous to even think about, but no more ridiculous than taking on a crazed-tailed beast. Kakashi and Naruto had already arrived by the time I reached there. The Anbu operative was a spy and is dead. Sasuke reassured her. Sakura turned to Naruto, her eyes questioning. Sasuke hadn't given her a straight answer. Haha, yeah, sensei's awesome. It was all over before I could blink. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. Sasuke watched him carefully but opted not to say anything. We've had a rough day, Sasuke said, subtly changing the topic. Naruto was visibly relieved. What happened out there? She asked, curiosity piqued by their expressions. She decided to press them for details on her capture later since both of them were uncomfortable with discussing it for some reason. Had sensei forbidden them from talking about it? Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a look, debating how much to tell her about the events, including the appearance of Mito Uzumaki and the battle with Shukaku. So you know how Gaara was always a bit loopy. Turns out he had a tailed beast sealed inside him. Naruto began. A tailed beast? Sakura frowned at the unfamiliar word. Its ascension being made of chakra, like the 9 tails that attacked our village. Gaara had the one tail sealed inside him. It is known as Shukaku the Sand-Spirit. Sasuke elaborated. They sealed something like that inside him? Sakura looked horrified. No wonder he was acting like that. Do you think it was possessing him? I don't think so, Naruto said, somehow uncomfortable with this topic as well. I heard from Pervy Sage that the sand treated him like shit. He was proud of the plausible excuse for knowing something about Gaara. They tried to assassinate him many times to make him stronger or something messed up like that. So he ended up not trusting anyone and thought everyone was out to get him. Sakura's eyes widened. That's terrible. It explains a lot about his behavior, Sasuke spoke after remaining silent for a moment. If his own village turned against him, it's no surprise he lashed out. So what happened to him? Sakura prompted. I kicked his ass, that's what. Naruto exclaimed, eager to look good in front of Sakura. This bastard helped too, and I mean Tomi suppressed it in the end. Sakura frowned disapprovingly at the way Naruto addressed Sasuke, but let it go, since she was curious about who this new character was. Tomi. She's a kunoichi from the Sealing Corps, Sasuke said, eyeing Naruto and hoping he wouldn't spill anything. This information was probably on a need-to-know basis only, and Sakura didn't strictly need to know. Naruto nodded. Yeah, Gaara kind of transformed into Shukaku by using a jutsu that made him fall asleep. At least, that's how it seemed. The moment he nodded off, the sand around him went wild and came alive. Shukaku was so huge, it could have been half the height of the Hokage monument. And it was batshit crazy, too. Sakura listened incredulously and looked at Sasuke, sure that Naruto was exaggerating. But Sasuke merely nodded, confirming what Naruto said. I tried this cool summoning jutsu Jiraiya taught me, but I messed it up the first time. The second try, though, I summoned this incredible swordsman toad. It really took it to Shukaku, believe it. Sakura nodded slowly, still trying to wrap her head around the enormity of Naruto's story. With Sasuke's silent nod of agreement, the tale, as unbelievable as it sounded, must be true. She remembered vividly the jutsu Naruto displayed at the stadium, yet the idea that he could summon giant toads like Jiraiya of the Sannin was almost too much to believe. Jiraiya was a legendary figure who even mentored the 4th Hokage, but it was difficult to grasp that Naruto had grown so much in a month. How did you learn all this in a month? She asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Well, Naruto hesitated, the shadow clone jutsu can transfer the memory of the clone to the user. So it was dead useful to train. Sasuke froze, realizing the implications. He could see that Sakura understood the implications as well, given her gobsmacked look. You learn everything your clones learn? Sasuke asked, unable to contain his disbelief. That's too convenient. Why doesn't everyone do it, then? Well, I have a lot of chakra. Like, more than even the old man. It's a genetic thing, he elaborated, noticing Sakura's questioning look. That's why I can form so many shadow clones without breaking a sweat. How many could I form? Sasuke asked. 3. Maybe 4 if you stretched it. What about Kakashi-sensei? Well, he's tricky. He has enough chakra to make 20 or more, but his Sharingan would drain 20 times as much chakra. Because of that, he'd make 4 or 5 at best. How many can you make? Sakura asked curiously. I've seen you make more than 20. I can make around 24 normal shadow clones at best, but more than 100 using the multi-shadow clone technique. But they're way less durable and not very useful for learning jutsu. And from my training, I can't really learn well if there are more than 10 clones. It really messes up and confuses the brain. Do you learn everything the clones learn? Sasuke asked, still disappointed that he could only make 3 at best. But he intended to master this jutsu once the invasion was over. Sort of, Naruto replied. It's hard to explain. With ninjutsu, if a clone practices, it needs to train twice as long as I would. But I can learn things in half the time if I do it myself. With Taijutsu, a clone needs to train 3 times longer, or I need 3 clones learning at once. Pervy Sage told me the feedback is a bit inefficient, which is why not many people train like this. Sasuke's initial excitement died down, but he vowed to increase his chakra capacity to be able to make good use of the technique. How many clones could I make? Sakura asked hesitantly, afraid of the answer. Naruto winced. You'll need to triple your chakra capacity to make one, but you have awesome control, Sakura. None of us can control chakra as well as you. Remember the tree climbing exercise? Sakura was disappointed at the answer, but she knew she had subpar reserves. It was unfair, but genetics played a key role in determining your chakra capacity. So, how can you tell how much chakra we have, Naruto? Sakura asked curiously. She was wondering why Sasuke asked Naruto this. I kind of have a sensing-like skill now. Naruto trailed off, repeating the same lie he told Sasuke. Sakura wasn't very convinced. But she didn't want to press Naruto for an answer. Naruto had improved unimaginably over a month, so much so that it was disorienting. Sasuke's progress was also amazing, but it was more or less expected of him. She was bitterly reminded of the fact that she was already lagging behind by a huge margin, even if she didn't compare herself to Naruto or Sasuke. It was through sheer willpower that she was able to shake off Ino during the Chunin exams, and she was probably the weakest of the genin in her batch. Her recent harrowing experience at the hands of the rogue Anbu agent really hammered in the need to at least be able to defend herself. She was kidnapped and almost killed just to act as a hostage against Kakashi-sensei, from which she gathered. A gentle knock sounded and Sakura was jolted out of her thoughts. Come in. She said. The door opened to reveal Iruka-sensei. A red-haired Kunoichi followed behind him. Sakura, I see you're doing better already. Iruka said cheerily. I am, thank you sensei. She smiled. Iruka had been a huge help in easing her out of the kidnapping and the near-death experience. She was unconscious through most of the harrowing ordeal, but it was terrifying to think that she would have died before even realizing it if the rogue shinobi had his way. Sakura, meet Miss Tomi, who helped the village in a big way in the war today. She came here to escort Naruto and Sasuke to safety after their mission. Sakura bowed to the unfamiliar Kunoichi with respect. It's an honor to meet you, ma'am. Thank you for saving my teammates. Tomi smiled. The pleasure is mine, Sakura. Tomi ni-chan, Naruto cringed inwardly as he addressed the much older shinobi so familiarly, but he couldn't very well call her granny while she maintained her youthful disguise. Could you check something for Sasuke? What? Sasuke snapped, caught off guard before realizing Naruto was likely referring to his cursed seal. It's under control, Kakashi handled it, he added quickly, his tone dismissive as he sought to minimize the issue. Mito's expression shifted to concern. What's the problem? Naruto hesitated, then said, that snake freak Orochimaru bit him and placed a seal on his shoulder. His voice trailed off as he noted Mito's sharp intake of breath. Let me see it, Mito insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. Sasuke, though reluctant, turned and pulled aside his collar to expose the dark pulsating seal. Mito inhaled sharply. That wicked snake, she muttered under her breath, her hands moving swiftly through a series of hand seals. She touched 4 points around the seal, her fingers pausing slightly at each contact, creating a geometric pattern. Art of containment. 5-element shackling seal. Art of revelation. Cursed seal decipher. Sakura watched, awestruck, as the 4 points Tomi touched glowed in golden color and joined together to form a square shape. When she performed the second jutsu, the cursed seal unraveled, forming a writhing and shifting mass of illegible characters that she could make no sense of. However, watching Tomi's rapidly darkening face, the meaning of the seal seemed clear to the older Kunoichi. Mito examined the seal intently, her focus unbroken for several minutes. The room fell silent, heavy with tension. Sakura bit her lip, yearning to ask about Sasuke's condition and whether the seal could be removed, yet the stern look on Tomi's face suggested the situation was serious but not immediately fatal. Finally, Mito broke her concentration, her face set with determination. She launched into a new series of hand seals, her hands radiating golden chakra. As she moved, her long red hair seemed to lift and wave as if stirred by an invisible wind. Even Sakura, lacking sensory abilities, could sense the formidable energy emanating from her. Uzumaki-style art of deconstruction. Reverse heaven elemental purification seal. She exclaimed, pressing 3 fingers over the pitch-black tomo patterns of the original cursed seal. She moved the fingers counterclockwise, tracing a complete circle. Uzumaki style. Iruka muttered in shock and realization, seeing Tomi in a new light. He never imagined that a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, other than perhaps Naruto, still lived in Konoha. Perhaps she was an Anbu operative or one of the secret assets of the village. No wonder she assessed and repaired the barrier seals of the safe house, as if it were child's play. Mito removed her hands from Sasuke's shoulder and watched her seal devour Orochimaru's cursed seal with satisfaction. Somehow, Orochimaru had gained access to some of the Uzumaki clan's darker sealing techniques. He had joined 2 Uzumaki forbidden sealing techniques. The first forbidden Uzumaki seal studied by Orochimaru was straightforward. It filtered nature chakra and injected it into the host's body. Although it significantly strengthened the host, it also drove them mad for power. Hence the reason for it being forbidden. The second technique was an even more nefarious technique that sealed a part of someone's existence inside someone else by transferring their life chakra and taking over the body of the possessed. It was a technique for immortality and was supposedly created at one of the darkest points of Uzumaki history when they were once on the brink of annihilation. Orochimaru had stolen the techniques, tweaked and combined them into the monstrosity that she saw today. Once he takes over the host body, Orochimaru will have access to not only the abilities of that body, but also the ability to wield nature chakra. Lady Tomi Sakura's hesitant voice snapped Mito out of her reverie. Will Sasuke be alright? Yes. She nodded confidently. She faced Sasuke with a serious expression. The cursed seal imparted by Orochimaru will be neutralized by the seal I've applied within a few weeks. However, it's crucial that you avoid exerting yourself during this period. Her lips curved into a slight smile as she added, and by that, I mean adhere to normal human limits, not those of an Uchiha. Sasuke was a little put out, but nodded thankfully. What was the seal intended to do? He said something about a gift to increase my power. But what's the catch? It would slowly erode your consciousness to replace your soul with Orochimaru's. Sasuke paled at the blunt description. I am indebted to you then, he said, bowing deeply. He knew there were no free meals, and Orochimaru would gain much more than him with any gift that he gave. Just don't strain yourself. Mito reminded, waving off the thanks. Lady Tomi, Iruka bowed, newfound respect in his voice. I may be out of line here, but perhaps you could also have a look at a similar seal Orochimaru placed on one of our jounin. He placed it a long time ago, from what I understand. He placed more. Mito was startled to hear this and extremely worried. This meant that Orochimaru would not truly be dead until all of such seals were dealt with. Take me to her. She said, her voice commanding once more. Iruka complied hurriedly, leading her out of the room after a nod of farewell to Team 7. She's a relative of yours? Sakura asked, her tone bursting with curiosity. She had been startled when she heard Naruto's surname being associated with one of the jutsu Tomi used. She faintly recalled her first-year history lessons at the academy about the Uzumaki clan from Yuzushiogakure, renowned for their sealing techniques and characteristic red hair. Yeah, she said, we're related, but I don't know the specifics, Naruto confirmed. I don't think I've ever seen her before. Her hair is very distinctive. Sakura said thoughtfully. She was not in Konoha for an extended period, Sasuke said vaguely, saving Naruto from an explanation. Oh, I see. Naruto, do you think she'd be willing to give me some tips? Sakura asked hopefully. She seems like a powerful kunoichi. In fact, she may be the strongest I've seen so far. To think she was able to destroy the seal made by one of the Sannin. Naruto pondered that. That's a great idea, Sakura. I was hoping to learn something from her too. But I don't know for how long she will stay, or if she'll have time for us. He trailed off, feeling depressed as he was unsure of the duration of a reanimation jutsu. Oh, I guess she'll have important missions to go on. Sakura nodded. She hoped the older kunoichi could stay longer, both for Naruto's sake as well as hers. Sasuke took advantage of the lull in the conversation. Can you show me the shadow clone jutsu? I want to learn it. He said, activating his Sharingan. Didn't Tomi tell you not to overexert yourself? Naruto asked skeptically. I won't. You told me I could make 4. I'll just make 1 or 2. I just want to learn it as quickly as possible to increase the speed of my training. Well, only if you say the magic word. Naruto said smugly. Sakura frowned in disapproval. Sasuke took a deep breath. Please. Wow, you must really want to learn it then. Naruto was surprised. He had never seen the bastard not act high and mighty before. Maybe the episode with the Shukaku humbled him. He wasn't against teaching Sasuke the shadow clone, since he knew what kind of a monster his brother was. He hadn't realized it, but Sasuke had been living with a sword pointed at his throat. Lincoln, you'll miss it. Naruto grinned. Shadow clone jutsu. He yelled, and his identical copy manifested beside him. A second later, the clone performed the same jutsu, creating another clone, who performed the jutsu again. That's enough. I got it. Sasuke studied the technique with his Sharingan and nodded confidently. Shadow clone jutsu. Another copy of Sasuke manifested beside him. Sasuke winced as he felt half of his chakra vanish. That's not fair. Naruto yelled. How come you can copy it so easily? It took me an entire evening to learn it. You have no right to complain, both Sasuke and his clone said at the same time. And it's not a particularly difficult jutsu. He finished. Ah. The number of bastards has doubled. Naruto wailed dramatically. Sakura giggled, relaxing as she watched their interaction. I thought I told you to take it easy. Tomi asked from the door, eyeing Sasuke with disapproval. I'm not exhausted. Sasuke protested. Seeing Tomi's dangerous look, he hurriedly corrected, I'll stop now. He dismissed the shadow clone and felt the sensation of his clone's memories merging with his. He noted that he recovered about 70% of the chakra he expended to create the clone. How did it go? Did you destroy the Snake Lady seal? Naruto asked, curious. It went well. She is recovering. Mito replied, her expression thoughtful as she wondered how Naruto had come to know about Anko's seal. Sakura was hoping you could give her some tips to improve and, I was hoping you could teach me a bit about sealing. I know that's a lot to ask, Naruto added hesitantly. Tomi was taken aback by the request. Sakura, standing slightly behind Naruto, looked both embarrassed and grateful that he had spoken up for her. Lady Tomi, forgive me for being so forward. I would be very grateful for any help you could give me, even if you don't have the time to teach me directly. Sakura bowed deeply, still sitting up in her bed. I foresee that I will be quite busy in the upcoming days, but I will try to see what I can do for the both of you. Naruto, I was planning to talk to you about the Uzumaki clan and our sealing techniques and help you if you would like it. She faced Sakura and tilted her head thoughtfully. Can you tell me your strengths, Sakura, so that I may be able to assist you better? I have good chakra control. Sakura cringed. That's about it. I haven't learned any jutsu yet other than those from the academy. She's plenty smart, though. Naruto defended his teammate. She had the best marks in our class. Believe it. Mito nodded. Could you demonstrate your chakra control? She took out a small needle from her pouch and handed it to her. Place this in your thumb. Using only chakra, make it stand upright. She instructed. Sakura took the needle curiously and placed it flat on her thumb. She tried to channel a little chakra into it. It immediately flipped away from her thumb and landed on the ground. This is tricky. Sakura took the needle and placed it on her thumb again. This time, she was extremely careful with the amount of chakra she used. Slowly, the needle rose and stayed upright. Mito gave a small smile. Now, rotate the tip of the needle clockwise and make it trace a circle. Sakura frowned, concentrating harder, and did as she was told. Good. Mito balanced another needle on top of the first one. Sakura quickly reached out using her chakra so that the second needle wouldn't fall. Now rotate the first needle clockwise and the second one counterclockwise. Sakura struggled as she tried to move the two needles that were now precariously stuck together using chakra. After 2 failed attempts, she formed a wide circle with both the pins sticking together and rotating clockwise. She then tried to move the second needle independently of the first. The pins fell once again. Determined, Sakura took the pins again. For the next few minutes, Naruto and Sasuke watched silently as Sakura tried and failed to get the strange exercise to work. After about 10 tries, she was finally able to do what Mito wanted. That's enough, Mito said, much to Sakura's relief. I can see that you are quite good with control, and it can improve with time. With such precise control, learning medical ninjutsu would be the best path forward for you. Once the invasion is over, I will recommend you to the medical corps. I can also teach you the basics of sealing jutsu along with Naruto. You can choose a path between these two depending on your aptitude. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to teach you the specific techniques of my clan. Of course, I understand. Sakura bowed deeply. Thank you very much, Lady Tomi. Mito smiled. In the meantime, increase the number of pins as much as you can. Will do, Sakura said determinedly. How many do you think is possible, Tomi-sensei? Mito hummed thoughtfully. The possibilities are endless. This is based on one of the guiding principles for the puppet jutsu of Tsunagakure. There are shinobi who could control hundreds of puppets, each with many moving parts. But they do have several secret techniques and training that allow them to do so. The person who invented this particular training method, Tsunade, could form a chain of up to 100 pins with independent movements before she moved on from this exercise. According to her standards, any shinobi capable of balancing 5 or more pins are to be recruited into the medical corps without question. I believe you will be able to reach this level in a week at most, given how quickly you adapted to this. 100, Sakura said, awestruck. Lady Tsune truly is incredible. Do you know her personally, Lady Tomi? Naruto and Sasuke shared a look and Mito hid a smile. Yes, she and I are related. If she ever returns to Konoha, I will introduce you to her. I will try my best to master this exercise, sensei. Sakura bowed deeply once again. Mito nodded in approval. Regarding sealing jutsu, Sasuke began hesitantly. Could you include me as well when you're teaching them the basics, your ladyship? I don't see why not. Mito smiled at Sasuke's overly formal request. Anyone with an aptitude for the art is a blessing for Konoha. Although I will warn you, it's not for everyone. Thank you. Sasuke said honestly. He completely understood the need for secrecy when it came to clan techniques. Even teaching them the basics was a big thing, since the Uzumaki clan was likely to have an incredible insight into the basics. Meanwhile, Naruto had picked up a needle and was trying to see how far he could go with the exercise. He had to struggle a lot to balance even a single needle on his thumb. Although his chakra control was good, it was usually for a large quantity of chakra. To be able to manipulate a minuscule quantity of chakra to such a level required a huge amount of control. He recalled that Kabuto trained using the same exercise and had achieved a chain with a whopping 40 needles. If he could make a chain of at least 10 needles, he would have enough control to perform basic first aid. With his level of reserves, however, it was going to be an enormous task. Mito watched curiously as Naruto struggled with the needle. For someone with as much chakra as Naruto, this was going to be the hardest thing to do. If one developed their control along with their expanding chakra reserves, it wouldn't be a problem. However, Naruto was only starting to learn precise control when his chakra levels had reached such vast levels. She was interested to see if he could pull it off. Naruto, do you have a moment? We can speak now if you have the time. Mito's voice cut through the chatter, drawing his immediate attention. With an enthusiastic nod and a grin spreading across his face, Naruto excused himself from his friends. I'll catch up with you guys later, he promised, his voice tinged with excitement as he followed Mito out of the room. As they walked, the questions that had been swirling in his mind bubbled to the surface. He was eager to understand more about his connection to the Uzumaki clan and Mito in particular. Naruto followed Mito to another unoccupied room. Mito flipped through a few hand seals and pressed her hand at the door, and a sealing formula spread outwards from her hands. Mito took a deep breath. That will give us some privacy. As I mentioned before, I am Mito Uzumaki. I was the eldest child of my father Ashina Uzumaki, a clan head of the Uzumaki clan. After the early death of two of my younger brothers, the title of clan head was passed on to my youngest brother, Kaido. When I was 20 years old, my father betrothed me to the heir of the Senju clan, Hashirama Senju. He had made quite a name for himself by then, already becoming one of the strongest shinobi of the time. More than a decade after I married him, Hashirama formed an alliance with the Uchiha clan and their leader, Madara Uchiha, who was a childhood friend of his. As a result of this alliance, the village hidden in the leaves was formed. Hashirama made it known that they would accept any and all clans to join the village, irrespective of the past hatred, citing the alliance with the Uchiha as a prime example. Many clans flowed into Konoha and it became the harbinger of a new era. Some clans feared our power and did not wish to join Konoha. The daimyos of the different lands took advantage of this fear. They imitated the fire daimyo and formed their own hidden villages, attracting such clans. The 5 great ninja villages were hence formed, marking an end to the era of the warring clans. However, Madara left the village just 5 years after it was formed, as he was rejected for the position of Hokage, following a fair voting process. More than a decade later, Madara returned to the village to challenge Hashirama. This time, he brought the 9-tailed fox with him, using it as his personal summons to gain the upper hand against Hashirama. Naruto paled. This Madara guy controlled the 9 tails. Mito nodded. Yes, he used the powers of his Sharingan to ensnare it in an illusion and make it attack the village. Fortunately, Hashirama's wood-style jutsu was able to suppress it. He defeated Madara and was forced to kill him when he realized that Madara would never stop threatening the village. Following this, I volunteered to seal the 9 tails within myself using the sealing jutsu of my clan. Thus, I became the first Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. Why didn't the Uzumaki clan join Konoha by this time? Naruto asked curiously. Good question, Mito said with a hint of sadness. The Uzumaki were not your traditional ninja village. They were not ruled by a daimyo and hardly ever accepted outside missions. They were more academically oriented and practiced ninjutsu only for self-defense. This is why Konoha became the first ninja village since Yuzu was not truly considered as one. While Naruto found a newfound respect for his clan, who adhered to peace even in such turbulent times. My younger brother, Kaido, was a firm believer in the guiding principles of the Uzumaki and refused Hashirama's offer to join Konoha. He believed that any village that depended on the feudal lords for income would always cause conflict. Although Hashirama told him that Uzumaki could be exempted from taking ninja missions in exchange for safeguarding the village with their seals, Kaido still refused the offer. He and his descendants would be content to live in Uzushiogakure and would keep out of the cycle of hatred that inevitably plagued the shinobi world. Naruto nodded, fascinated by the history of his blood relatives. Kaido's vision of peace did not satisfy the other hidden villages, though. They feared the Uzumaki clan, as they had the greatest knowledge in one of the most feared shinobi arts. Fuinjutsu, otherwise known as sealing techniques. About half a century after the founding of Konoha, Uzushiogakure faced the consequences of this fear. They were attacked by a coalition of shinobi villages. Other than a few survivors who fled during the chaos, the rest of the Uzumaki clan was destroyed at that time. It was the destruction of Uzushiogakure that prompted Konoha to declare war for what was the first and hopefully the last time in its history. This was against Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri, marking the beginning of the Second Shinobi War. Mito paused, allowing Naruto time to absorb the information. Kaido's granddaughter, Kushina, was brought to Konoha when I was 83 years old. You see, it was apparent that I would not live for much longer. Kushina had an especially strong chakra even among the Uzumaki clan, and she had inherited our rare bloodline, the chakra chains that you saw me use against Shukaku. Because of this, it was decided that she would succeed me as the second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Yuzu was destroyed 2 years after Kushina arrived in Konoha. Naruto's mind boggled at the mention of Mito's age. Even the old man, whom he considered ancient, was in his 60s. Mito was so much older than him. Mito smiled, understanding Naruto's thoughts. Yes, Kushina and I had quite the age gap, even though she is my youngest brother's granddaughter. Anyway, it had become a concern what would become of the 9 tails after my passing. Tailed beasts do not die, they simply reform after a few years. Thus, the 9 tails would be free once more if I died with it sealed within me. It was hence decided to seal the 9 tails within Kushina. Naruto nodded, wincing at the terrible fate of the young girl. He began to suspect who Kushina was to him. In a few years, Kushina was made the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. I passed soon after that. A Jinchuriki does not survive the extraction of a tailed beast, especially at my age. I am unsure of the specifics of her future, but I am told that she died during the attack of the 9 tails 13 years ago. Naruto frowned. Something didn't add up. But the 9 tails was sealed within her, right? How could it attack the village then? Mito sighed. I can only guess. I had hypothesized that the seal of the 9 tails may weaken during childbirth, since it is a chakra-intensive activity for shinobi. The newborn gains chakra from their mother, after all. A woman's control over the chakra is also very poor at that time. I had anticipated this and set down detailed instructions and procedures to follow, so that such a mishap wouldn't come to pass. I'm sure Hiruzen and the 4th Hokage took every precaution to avoid that eventuality. When ninjas are prepared to face something, they rarely fail. Unless something unpredictable happened. Naruto connected the dots. So you're saying, he said in a horrified whisper. She died while giving birth to me? No, Mito said firmly. As I said, it's highly unlikely that something like that happened naturally. There are no coincidences. The information of her childbirth likely got leaked and someone attacked at that vulnerable moment. But still, if it wasn't for me, Naruto, Mito said seriously. If it wasn't you, it would be another baby. Childbirth is both the greatest joy and necessity for a parent. Never blame yourself for something like this. When I held the child in my arms, it was the most joyful moment in my life, and that's true for any parent. Okay, Naruto trailed off, still upset over the fact that he had lost his mother at birth because of the 9 tails. So, you're my great-grandaunt? He asked, finally realizing the family connection. Mito smiled softly. Yes, Naruto. She stepped forward and gave him a gentle hug. Naruto stiffened at the unfamiliar gesture but gradually relaxed into the embrace. Although Mito's hands were cold, Naruto felt a warmth inside him that he had never felt before. Thank you for telling me. Naruto sniffled, his hands furiously rubbing away the tears pricking his eyes. Is there a reason why the Jinchuriki are always from our clan? I don't have the chakra chain thingy, but I was made a Jinchuriki too. Mito nodded. Yes. Most of the Uzumaki have exceptionally strong chakra, sometimes even more so than our Senju cousins. I can see that you have inherited the strength of chakra. In fact, I believe your chakra may even be stronger than hers. Is the strong chakra also part of the bloodline limit? Naruto asked. Yes. The members of our clan are descendants of the younger daughter of a great ancestor, referred to as Ashura. The descendants of Ashura's elder son is the Senju, the clan to which my husband belonged. Naruto perked up to the familiar name. Oh yeah, that's Super Grand Sage's son. So I'm descended from him, too. Super Grand Sage? Mito asked with confusion. I think his name is Hogoromo Otsutsuki or something, Naruto said, completely butchering the pronunciation. He's called the Sage of the 6 Paths. How did you know the name of the Sage of the 6 Paths? Mito exclaimed. He lived 1,000 years ago. Even the knowledge of the name of our ancestor Ashura, who is thought to be his son, is based on the fact that another famous Uzumaki was said to have been named after him. Naruto did not plan to keep any secrets from the only family he had seen, so he glanced around nervously before removing the illusion concealing the Rinnegan. I met him when I awakened these. He trailed off, watching Mito's dumbfounded expression. THTHTHTH, that's the Rinnegan. Mito squeaked, stumbling back in shock and awe. She had heard stories of how the sage's eyes looked like. The ringed eye of the Rinnegan was its distinctive feature. Yeah, Naruto grinned, pleased at the reaction to his awesome bloodline. I awakened it a few days ago. How? Mito asked, still in disbelief. That's not our clan's bloodline. Well, it's complicated. Naruto scrunched his face as he tried to recall the details of his conversation with the sage. So the Senju are the descendants of the younger son of the Super Gramps sage, and the Uchiha are the descendants of the elder son. The sage had the Rinnegan and a sort of powerful chakra called Six Paths in Jutsu. His elder son Indra inherited a less awesome version of the sage's eye powers, called the Mangekyo Sharingan. The younger son later awakened his power of bodily chakra, or the Six Paths age power. The brothers never got along, so neither did their descendants. Mito nodded, following the explanation so far. This coincided with some of the old legends or folktales regarding the sage. However, there was a lot of hyperbole and fiction in those stories, so one never knew what the truth was. A few years ago, someone called Uchiha Shisui, who had a powerful Mangekyo Sharingan, was hunted by a dude named Danzo. He had already lost one eye to him and was trying to protect his other eye. He decided that the best thing to do was to give his super eye powers to someone else secretly. But he knew that not everyone can handle his Sharingan, as it sucks a whole lot of chakra. So for some reason, he decided that I would be the best choice for giving away his powers. So he sneaked into my place and transferred his eye chakra to me. I didn't know that the young Shimura had gone rogue, Mito remarked sadly as Naruto paused for a breath of air. He was in charge of a separate Anbu division during the time of my death. Well, that got disbanded officially after the war, but he's doing plenty of messed up shit in the background. Naruto said, grimacing at Kabuto's memories. The third didn't know about a good chunk of what he was up to, so he tolerated Danzo since he thought he had the well-being of the village in mind. How are you more informed about this than the Hokage? Mito asked, shocked at Naruto's knowledge. I'll come to that, Naruto promised, wincing at having to explain his soul-sucking powers. I only came to know today. Please continue your narrative, Naruto. Sorry for the interruption. I was just shocked at everything that had happened. Naruto nodded in understanding. So, when Shisui gave me the special Uchiha chakra of the Mangekyo Sharingan, it combined with my own chakra and created the chakra of the sage as a result. Mito nodded, finally finding a sensible explanation. You said something about having met the sage. Mito asked, going to the most perplexing part of the story. Yeah, his chakra is so strong that it remained after his death and is watching over what's happening in the shinobi world. When I awakened the Rinnegan, he appeared within my mind and spoke to me. What did he say? Mito asked, scarcely believing what she was hearing. He explained how I got the Rinnegan and told me a bit about its powers. He said I'll figure out most of it along the way. He taught me this, he said, casually forming a rod made of yin chakra, how to float, a bit on how to control gravity, and how to interpret what I see with the Rinnegan. He said that there's more to the story, but he doesn't want to burden me with more details at this time. Mito watched the yin release rod in fascination. This is incredible. The Rinnegan is said to be the original bloodline limit and said to encompass all bloodlines. It is said to be the eye that enables the wielder to ascend above the karmic cycle of birth and death. To think it has appeared in this world after such a long time. Hervey Sage said another student of his had the Rinnegan. He was an orphan from the Hidden Rain and was probably an Uzumaki based on his hair. That was a long time ago, though. That guy, Nagato, was killed a few years after Jiraiya trained him. Another Uzumaki with a Rinnegan? Mito asked in disbelief. How did that happen? He doesn't know how. He said Nagato died to Hanzo the salamander and it was very painful to think about him. Mito nodded. This probably happened after her death or she would have heard about it otherwise. Can you tell me what you see through your eyes? She asked curiously. I see the chakra inside everyone and what kind of affinity they have. I can also see what they look like normally. It's like I see the chakra on top of normal vision. I can see the 8 inner gates in a person's chakra network. I can see pretty far too, depending on the amount of chakra a person has. For example, I could see Gaara from the other end of the village because of how much chakra he has. I can see the barrier jutsu surrounding the village. If I create a shadow clone, I can see what the clone sees as well. Kind of like a shared vision. The Rinnegan is super helpful in understanding how jutsu works, but it's not broken like the Sharingan which can copy a jutsu just like that. That's quite an impressive range of visual abilities. Mito remarked. The Rinnegan's abilities seem to be centered around chakra. I can also see souls, Naruto said hesitantly. I didn't fully realize what it was till I saw you, Granny. Mito's eyes widened in surprise. Could you please explain that, Naruto? I can see a ghostly outline around you, and I can see some white thread-like thing sewing that outline to the body, Naruto said hesitantly. Mito grimaced at the abnormal state of existence she was reduced to. Naruto continued. I could see the sky turn black above the stadium and a weird purple rip opening above it. I saw your souls getting dragged inside that barrier. That's incredible. Mito was awestruck once more. The Rinnegan is truly in a higher realm. To think it can see the gateway to the pure world. Naruto hesitated. Earlier, one of Orochimaru's spies called Kabuto had kidnapped Sakura to threaten me. He wanted to answer a few questions of his. During the exam, I used both water and earth styles. I couldn't use any elemental jutsu before. I guess that he wanted to know how I learned all that in a month. He didn't give me much time and started to squeeze her throat. He then hit her with a medical chakra slightly above the death gate at the cardiac nexus. That stimulated a pseudo-death state by inducing extreme bradycardia, but I thought she was really gonna die. Mito was slightly disoriented at the abrupt jargon from Naruto, who usually used very informal speech. You're quite knowledgeable about medical ninjutsu. She praised, being reminded of her granddaughter. Yeah, that's a side effect. Naruto grimaced. Side effect? Of what? When I thought that Kabuto had killed Sakura, I kind of lost control. I pulled Kabuto towards me with gravity manipulation and, Naruto shivered involuntarily, I sucked his soul out of him and absorbed it using a technique called ninjin. Mito was floored by the revelation. Her expression was a mixture of shock and disbelief. You absorbed a soul. She repeated, appalled. She couldn't wrap her head around the implications of such a thing. Although she had applied a soul seal on herself, it was another matter to manipulate someone else's soul. It wasn't something she would have thought possible without the intervention of the Shinigami. For a human to wield such power, would it be fair to call someone like that a human? Her husband was called a god, but even he couldn't do something as profound as this ability touched on the very essence of life and death, a domain traditionally reserved for mythical entities. Naruto, that's unheard of. Absorbing a soul is beyond what even the most forbidden jutsu are thought capable of. Seeing Naruto's discomfort, she softened her tone, realizing the gravity of the burden he carried. This is a very serious matter, she continued, her voice more composed but still showing concern. We need to understand how this happened. We have to comprehend the implications of what this means. What are the side effects that you mentioned? I know everything that Kabuto knew in his life. He was a medical ninja, that's where my knowledge of medical ninjutsu came from. It has not blended in completely yet and I don't know how much it will integrate with me, but if I try to recall medical ninjutsu, I can remember everything he knew. But I can't use it even remotely well, since my chakra control is so bad. Mito struggled to keep her composure as she realized what this technique does. It is an incredible information gathering tool, but as Naruto absorbs more souls, it could be possible that his personality may shift and begin to identify more with some of the absorbed souls. It was a dangerous technique. This may be dangerous for you as well. Please refrain from using this jutsu in the future. Mito advised. I don't plan to. Naruto shuddered. I have a feeling I'll have a lot of nightmares from what Kabuto has experienced and what he has done. He was manipulated by Danzo since he joined as a root agent from the orphanage. Danzo set things up so that he killed the orphanage matron, whom he thought of as his own mother. Orochimaru took advantage of this and got Kabuto to do his dirty work as a double agent. He helped the snake-free conduct some sick and twisted experiments on humans. Naruto felt sick as he recalled the twisted experiments. Mito's visage darkened. We will deal with Danzo. And that snake may still be alive. If he gave that seal to others. Yeah, Kabuto had a feeling that the seal was for something like that. There's a dangerous crystal release user called Gurren and a Kagaya clan member with a dead bone pulse bloodline called Kimimaro who has the cursed seal. Kimimaro is on the verge of death, though. Then there's the Sound Four, who were his bodyguards. They were the ones that made the barrier around the Hokage earlier. Mito frowned thoughtfully. Those four are dead. The two others that you mentioned could be a problem. Well, one good thing that came out of all this is that I know all of his hideouts, I think. At least those that Orochimaru knew. I know where these two are supposed to be. Once the invasion is over, we will inform Hiruzen and make it our first priority to take them down. Mito nodded, relieved that they now had so much intel on the enemy. So, did you know the third when he was like, really young? Naruto asked curiously. Mito laughed. I had visited his family when he was born along with my husband. My husband and his brother had trained him and I watched him grow up and become the Hokage. Wow, that certainly gave Naruto some perspective. Have you ever met Tsunade, Naruto? My granddaughter. Naruto shook his head. Nope. I only know her from Kabuto's intel. She's apparently into gambling and drinking these days. He winced as he saw Mito's expression. What happened to her? She was depressed after she lost Nawaki and Dan, but I thought she would pull herself out of it. I remember her shutting herself up in her room during the second war after she lost Dan. I used to talk to her at length daily, hoping to break her out of her shell. I don't know if she ever recovered, as I died shortly after that. It seems like she never did. Apparently, she developed a fear of blood during the Second Shinobi War, Naruto said, relying on Kabuto's intel once more. She never told me about that, Mito said sadly. She probably didn't want to worry me. So that's why she was forced to retire as a shinobi. We'll get her back. Stuff happens, she can't just hide away because of that. We'll go and talk to her. We can ask Pervy Sage to come along, too. Naruto declared.